I always thought silence would save me. After the breakup, I told myself that all I needed was quiet. No arguments bleeding through the walls. No half-finished bottles of wine turning to vinegar on the counter. No ghost of a man's voice asking if I was okay, when we both knew I wasn't. So when the listing for Riverside Apartments appeared online, a modest, one-bedroom on the east side of Portland with creaky floors and river fog that smelled like cold stone, I signed the lease within an hour. The place wasn't much, but it felt like a reprieve. The hallway smelled of lemon cleaner and old carpet. The mailboxes still had brass labels from the 70s. My unit, 2A, faced the courtyard, where a single maple tree leaned toward the sky like it was tired of standing. On my first evening, I unpacked the kitchen boxes and left the blinds half open so the amber glow from the parking lot spilled inside. "New tenant?" a voice called behind me. I turned to find an older woman balancing a laundry basket on her hip. "Yes, Lena Morell," I said. "Mrs. Trout," she introduced herself, breathing lightly. "Landlord. Welcome to Riverside. The building is quiet and primarily inhabited by retirees. You'll like it here." That was precisely what I wanted. Quiet. She pointed toward the unit across the hall. "That's Mr. Keene in 2B. Night photographer. Keeps to himself but a good man. Helps tenants move out when the stairs get too much for them." I smiled politely. "Sounds like a gentleman." "Oh, he is," she said, almost proud. "Been here longer than I have." The first time I saw him was 3 days later. I was carrying groceries up the stairs when a calm voice said, "Need a hand with that?" He appeared from the dim hallway. Mid-40s maybe, tall, with salt and pepper hair combed back neatly. He wore a wool coat even though it was mild outside and smelled faintly of cedar and something chemical, like film developer. "Thank you," I said, shifting the bags. He took 2 from me with practiced ease. "You're Lena, right?" "Apartment 2A, I blinked. "Yes, how did you—" He gestured to the mailboxes. "Saw your name earlier. Always good to meet the new neighbor." Inside, he set the bags on my counter. His movements were deliberate, almost graceful, like someone conscious of every inch of space he occupied. When I offered coffee, he declined. "I only drink at night," he said lightly. "Keeps me awake for work." "What kind of photography do you do?" "Night work," he repeated. "Cities asleep. Lights that don't know they're being watched." Something about the phrasing lodged in my chest, but I laughed softly. "That's poetic." He smiled. Thin, symmetrical. A smile rehearsed for the lens. When he left, the faint scent of cedar lingered. Days bled together. I worked remote design contracts from my couch, ordered Thai takeout too often, and tried to convince myself that solitude was healing. At night, I'd read until 2 or 3 a.m., my lamp casting a warm circle across the bed. Sometimes I'd hear the faint creak of floorboards from the hall, or the hum of pipes when someone showered late. Ordinary sounds, I told myself. One night, as I washed dishes, a soft knock came at the door. I opened it to Mr. Keene holding a small package. "This was left by the mailroom for 2A, he said. "Thanks." I glanced at the label. It was mine. He hesitated, as if wanting to say more. "Do you like music, Ms. Morell?" he asked suddenly. "I guess so." He smiled faintly. "I heard you playing Mazzy Star last night." "Into Dust, beautiful song." My stomach tightened. I had played that song once, alone, barely loud enough for me to hear. "You must have good ears," I managed. "Old walls," he said, tapping the frame gently. "They share everything." After he left, I turned off my lamp earlier than usual. But at 3:07 a.m., I woke suddenly, heart pounding, certain that something had clicked in the dark. Weeks passed. Portland's autumn bled gray. Rain hissed softly against the windows like static. I convinced myself I was imagining things. The faint shutter sound at night, the sense that someone was awake whenever I was. Still, small things began to unsettle me. My doormat slightly crooked each morning. My toothbrush was damp when I hadn't used it. The cat, Miso, stared at the vent above the bed and hissed until his tail puffed like a brush. One evening, I met Mr. Keene again in the hall. He was locking his door, carrying a tripod. "Working tonight?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Always." He tilted his head, studying me. "You leave your lamp on till 3:07 every morning." My throat tightened. "How would you know that?" He smiled mildly. "The courtyard windows reflect your room. Light patterns are hard to miss." "Right," I murmured, retreating toward my door. As it shut, I caught his whisper, too low to be certain, something like, "Keep the light on." That night I unplugged the lamp entirely. By November I was checking locks twice before bed. My friend said I needed therapy, not another move. "You're hypervigilant," my friend Mara said over the phone. "Breakups mess with your sense of safety." Maybe she was right. Yet the sounds persisted. The faint click-click from somewhere beyond the walls and the whir of something mechanical starting and stopping. One afternoon, Mrs. Trout knocked with rent receipts. I hesitated, then asked, "Has Mr. Keene ever had complaints? Anything odd?" Her brow furrowed. "Good man. Pays on time. Keeps to himself. Does he have access to maintenance keys?" She laughed softly. "He's helped people move out, sure. Folks trust him." Trust. The word tasted wrong. That night, Miso vanished. I searched every corner, every stairwell, and every vent. The hallway echoed my own voice calling his name. Mr. Keene's door remained closed, light visible under it like a thin golden wound. At 2 a.m., I slid a note under his door, "Have you seen my cat?" By morning, the note was gone, but no reply came. Sleep fractured into fragments. I'd drift off only to wake with the sense that someone had just left the room. My phone buzzed twice around 3 a.m. Unknown numbers, voicemail messages filled only with soft breathing. I went to the police. The officer's expression hovered between patience and disbelief. "Any evidence he's entered your apartment?" "No, but things move." "My toothbrush. Could be maintenance, cleaning staff, even humidity," he interrupted. "You mentioned sounds of a camera. Without proof, there's not much we can do." On the way home, fog rolled in off the river, swallowing the streetlights until everything looked underwater. When I reached my door, an envelope sat on the welcome mat. Inside, a Polaroid of my own front door taken from the courtyard. The blinds were half open. My shadow is visible behind them. I ran to Mrs. Trout's unit, pounding until she opened bleary-eyed. "Did anyone deliver this?" She frowned at the photo. "Strange. Maybe kids?" "Kids don't use Polaroids." Her eyes softened. "Honey, Riverside's old, but it's safe." "Maybe you're just... I'm not imagining this." My voice cracked. She patted my arm awkwardly. "I'll have the locks checked." She never did. The following nights blurred into each other. Rain, static. The faint hum through the vent was like whispering air. I began sleeping on the couch. TV low for comfort. Around 2:30 one night, I caught motion in the dark. Just a shimmer, as if light bent wrong near the vent. When I approached, the air was cooler there, metallic. I crouched, flashlight trembling, and something glinted deep inside. A tiny glass circle reflecting my eye back at me. Panic surged. I unscrewed the grate with shaking fingers and found a small black device wired to a cable that disappeared into the wall. A lens. I carried it straight to the police station. The same officer from before examined it. "Looks like a microcam," he admitted. "Where exactly was it?" "Behind my bedroom vent," he scribbled notes. "We'll check the adjacent units." Hours later, they called me back. The camera was connected through the wall to apartment 2B, but the unit's empty. Empty? What do you mean? "Mr. Keene moved out yesterday. Left the key in the drop box." I felt the world tilt. Did you find anything else?" The officer's expression shifted. Several tapes labeled with apartment numbers. One marked Lena Week 9. We're cataloging them. I signed a report with trembling hands, then packed everything I owned by sunrise. When I left, the hallway seemed to breathe. Each step felt watched. I relocated to a short-term rental in Northeast Portland. New locks, second-floor unit, no shared vents. For the first time in months, I slept without the lamp. Still, quiet carried weight. I'd wake expecting the click, the hum, and the whisper. It wasn't there, but absence has its own sound. 2 weeks later, a small brown package appeared on my new doorstep. No return label, no postage stamp. Just my name written in neat black ink. Inside was a single Polaroid. I'm asleep in my new bed, clutching that very photograph. And in the darkness behind me, reflected faintly in the window glass, stands a figure holding a camera, face half hidden, smile perfectly still. I woke up to the sound of my own teeth grinding. That dry, scraping click that used to make Owen laugh. He'd call it my midnight Morse code. Now it just echoes inside my skull, dull and endless. like something trying to chew its way out. The apartment feels smaller since he died. The walls breathe differently, heavier somehow, as if the air learned grief too. It's been 11 months since the crash, though it still smells like burnt rubber whenever I pass the intersection on 5th. I keep thinking I should move, but packing his things feels like killing him all over again. I still use his toothbrush for cleaning jewelry. I still talk to him sometimes, like he's in the next room, mostly apologies. People said therapy would help me learn to smile again. I told myself the day I first met Dr. Pierce. They were wrong. That afternoon, I was sitting in my car outside his office, watching raindrops race down the windshield. My jaw ached, locked tight as always. The pain had a rhythm now, a pulse that synced with guilt. I almost didn't go in, but then I saw his name etched in brass beside the door. Dr. Harlan Pierce, Ph.D., grief counseling, emotional recovery, behavioral reconstruction. Behavioral reconstruction. The phrase felt surgical. Maybe that's why I trusted him. Inside, the waiting room smelled faintly of sandalwood and antiseptic, clean but human. No receptionist, just soft piano playing from somewhere unseen. The lamp in the corner cast a warm cone of amber light, and I remember thinking it looked like late afternoon forever frozen in a jar. Then he appeared. "Ms. Bell?" His voice was calm, low like the start of a prayer. "I'm Dr. Pierce, come in." He was older, 60 maybe. Gray hair combed neatly back, pressed shirt, corduroy jacket. But it was his eyes that stayed with me. Kind, steady, the sort of eyes that made you want to confess things. I followed him into his office, past walls lined with books and photographs of smiling people. They looked genuine, not stock photo genuine, but lived-in genuine. We sat across from each other. He didn't open a file or ask for forms. He just watched me for a moment. "You've been carrying something heavy," he said. I nodded. "My husband. The crash." He raised a hand gently. "You don't need to rehearse it. Just breathe." That was our first exercise, breathing. He had me inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. I tried, but my jaw resisted, trembling with a dull ache. He noticed. "You hold grief here," he said, touching his own chin. "In the mouth. People think it's the heart, but no. Grief settles where words die." I didn't understand what he meant, but it sounded true enough. Over the weeks, our sessions became ritual. Tuesdays and Fridays at 5. I'd sit in the same chair, stare at the same framed photo of a coastline behind him, and try not to think of Owen's face through shattered glass. Dr. Pierce would guide me through breathing, posture, then eventually smiling. "We'll rebuild it," he'd say. "Your smile. Muscles remember what the soul forgets." Sometimes he brought a camera. "Progress tracking," he explained when I hesitated. "Visual therapy helps quantify healing." He always asked permission, but his voice carried that fatherly certainty that made refusal feel childish. He'd angle the light, adjust the focus, then instruct me softly. "Now show me how you used to smile." The flash was gentle, diffused by the lamp's amber glow. But each click echoed in me like a tiny fracture. Weeks passed. My co-workers at the dental office noticed I talked less. Even the hum of the polishing drill felt distant. Patients' mouths became abstract puzzles, teeth, gums, enamel. I moved through them mechanically, gloved hands, mint paste, rinse, repeat. But every time I glimpsed my reflection in the mirror, my lips seemed slightly off-center, stretched, as if they'd been practicing without me. Dr. Pierce started using phrases like emotional necrosis and muscular atrophy of joy. He said my expressions were stiffening into memorials. "I want to help you reclaim authenticity," he told me once. "Let me see what happiness looks like when it hurts." He tilted my chin upward, fingers cool but firm. "Wider," he whispered. "There, perfect." When the flash went off, I felt something inside me flinch, not from pain exactly, but recognition. That night I dreamt of mirrors filled with other faces wearing my smile. It was late October when I first lost time. I'd gone home after a session, lay down on the couch, and woke up 3 hours later with gauze in my mouth. My jaw throbbed, metallic taste flooding my tongue. I spat into the sink, pink water, faint threads of white. I told myself it was sleepwalking. I'd probably clenched too hard, maybe bitten something. But then I found the disposable gloves on my kitchen counter, crumpled and powdered. I don't own gloves. At our next session, I tried to bring it up casually. I had a weird dream, I said. Felt like dental work. Dr. Pierce smiled faintly. Dreams are how the body rehearses healing. Did you feel relief afterward? I'm not sure, I admitted. I just felt empty. He nodded as if that were the correct answer. Then he adjusted the camera. This week, he said, we'll focus on symmetry. He dimmed the overhead lights and turned on a soft lamp near my face. The light hummed faintly. He positioned a mirror beside me. Look at yourself, he said. Don't analyze, just observe. What do you see? My mouth looks wrong, I whispered. In what way? Like it's remembering something I forgot. He smiled approvingly. Good, that's awareness. Now let's fix it. The click of the camera sounded like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. By December, I stopped visiting friends. I couldn't bear how they stared at me like I was unfinished. My best friend Lisa asked if I was losing weight. My cheeks felt tight all the time, skin stretched. Even yawning hurt. I brushed it off, told her stress was chewing me alive. At night, I caught myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror for long stretches, practicing smiles that didn't belong to me. Sometimes the corners of my lips twitched like they were following someone else's rhythm. That's when the email started. From CarPierceReconstructionClinic.com. Subject, Lesson 3, Grief as Form. Attachment, image danger. The photo was of me, mouth slightly open, eyes half-lidded. The caption read, Improvement Visible. I deleted it instantly, assuming it was some automated progress tracker. But they kept coming. Lesson 4, Lesson 5, each with attachments. Close-ups of my teeth, my gums, the curve of my lips under different lighting. Notes scribbled in red ink along the edges. Tension reduced. Smile memory stabilized. Corner ratio extended 1.2 km. I stopped opening them, but curiosity always wins over fear. By Lesson 7, I couldn't recognize myself. My smile looked painted on, too wide, too obedient. The night it all broke, snow was falling in heavy sheets. The city muffled itself, sound absorbed by white. My apartment felt colder than usual, and when I turned on the bathroom light, the mirror fogged over instantly. I wiped it with my sleeve. For a second, I thought someone else was standing behind me. My reflection lingered longer than it should have. The next day, I went to the clinic without an appointment. The receptionist's desk was still empty as always. I followed the faint scent of antiseptic down the hallway until I reached Dr. Pierce's door. It was unlocked. Inside, the lights were dim. No piano music this time. The air smelled metallic, almost like blood and developer fluid, the kind we used in dental x-rays. I called out his name. No answer. Then I saw the wall. Hundreds of photographs pinned in neat rows. Mouths, all mouths, mine at different angles, stages, expressions. Smiles too wide, gums exposed, teeth gleaming under harsh light. Each labeled in red ink. Week 2, minimal response. Week 5, encouraging strain. Week 9, elasticity achieved. My knees gave out. I pressed a hand to my jaw. Behind me, a door creaked open. Beautiful, isn't it? His voice was calm, almost tender. Dr. Pierce stepped out from a shadowed corner wearing latex gloves dusted with powder. His glasses caught the lamplight, reflecting my own distorted grin from the photographs. Why are you doing this? I managed. He looked genuinely puzzled. Doing what, Nora? You asked for healing. I gave it form. My throat closed. You've been operating on me. Not operating, he corrected gently. Refining. You couldn't smile anymore. So I helped your body remember. He reached for a folder on the desk and opened it, revealing sketches of a human mouth stretched beyond its natural curve, stitched at the corners. Smiles fade, but I've designed one that endures. I stumbled back. My jaw pulsed with heat. He sighed softly. Don't be afraid. You'll thank me. Permanence is mercy. I ran. The hallway warped as I moved, lights flickering, each bulb humming a different pitch. The exit door was locked. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. I could taste iron. Behind me, his footsteps were unhurried. You'll tear the stitches, he said. You'll ruin everything. I don't remember how I escaped. Only the sound of breaking glass, the rush of cold air, the city swallowing me whole. It's been 6 months since that night. I can't close my mouth. The corners of my lips are tethered too high, skin puckered into permanent mockery. The stitches dissolved weeks ago, but the scars remain, glossy and tight. Speaking hurts. Eating is worse. I drink through straws. I told the police everything, but Dr. Pierce vanished. Clinic emptied, records erased. The email address stopped working. Sometimes, though, my inbox pings with new messages. No sender, no subject line. Just attachments. Lesson 8. Grin forever. Lesson 9. Maintenance required. When I open them, the screen flickers. My reflection catches in the black gloss between frames, smiling wider than before. I tried smashing every mirror in the apartment, but reflections find their way back in spoons, windows, even puddles, and every one of them smiles first. At night, I dream of him adjusting lights again, whispering, "Wider, Nora, wider." I wake to the sound of my own teeth clicking, like a metronome marking time for a smile that refuses to end. I don't see patients anymore. The clinic fired me after too many complaints about my unnerving demeanor. They said children cried when I leaned over them. One kid told his mother, "She's wearing someone else's face." I wanted to explain, but my mouth won't form the words, so I just smiled. Now I keep the curtains drawn. I've taped over every reflective surface. Still, I feel watched, like a lens has replaced the air around me. Sometimes the TV turns itself on, static shaping into faint outlines of my grin. And once, just once, I heard his voice through it. "You're finally healing, Nora. I made sure your smile will never fade again." The screen flickered. Then an image appeared. Me, sitting exactly where I was. The same angle, same light. Only in the photo I wasn't blinking. I unplugged the TV. It stayed on for another 30 seconds. Now the hum never stops. Somewhere between the walls, behind the drywall or the vents, a faint electrical buzz sings like a camera warming up. Sometimes when I walk by the bathroom door, I hear the faint click of a shutter. I tell myself it's nothing. But each morning there are fresh prints slid under my door, high-gloss paper, the smell of developer still wet. My face caught mid-smile, annotated in red. Perfection sustained. I've stopped trying to hide. Maybe he's right. Maybe this is what healing looks like when it hurts. When I laugh, if that's what it is, the sound cracks dryly through the room, echoing against the walls like something rehearsed. And in that echo, beneath the brittle sound, I hear him whisper again, "Wider." I used to love working night shifts. The quiet felt clean, predictable, like the world was finally still enough to breathe. St. Meridian Psychiatric Hospital in Savannah, Georgia had that peculiar hum at night, fluorescent bulbs buzzing like trapped flies, distant air vents rattling, and the occasional echo of something shifting in the dark that no one wanted to name. I told myself I liked it because quiet meant control. But now I think quiet was just the absence of witnesses. My name is Ava Donnelly, 35, night nurse, 12 years at St. Meridian. The hospital sits at the edge of the city, where the Spanish moss thickens and the marsh air smells faintly of rot and sea salt. From the parking lot, you can see the water shimmer behind the tree line, reflecting the sodium yellow lights that never quite stay steady. I used to drink coffee on the front steps before my shift started, watching the glow flicker like the place was exhaling. Inside, everything was routine. Temperature checks, chart updates, meds. The walls were institutional beige, the kind of color that flattens everything it touches. I knew which tiles creaked and which patients faked sleep. Night shifts attract a certain kind of person, those who like silence or those running from something. I told myself I was the first kind. Room 313 was always locked. The sign on the door read, "Under evaluation." It had been that way since I started. Sometimes new hires asked what was inside, and the older nurses would just shrug. "Storage," they'd say. But the key never worked in its lock, and the small observation window was always covered from the inside. Once, years ago, I saw a light flicker under the door, just once, but no one else noticed. I convinced myself it was just reflection from the hallway. 2 months ago, they admitted Clara Holt, 24, history of self-harm, personality disorder, and what Dr. Kelman called persistent identity delusions. Her chart noted scars along both arms, like tally marks climbing toward her shoulders. When I first met her, she was sitting cross-legged on the bed, eyes wide and unblinking, hands folded neatly in her lap. "Evening, Clara," I said softly, checking her vitals. She smiled. Too easily. "You're Ava," she said. "I've been waiting to meet you." There's something about hearing your name from a stranger's mouth in that kind of tone. It lands differently. Like they already know the rest of your story. I forced a small laugh. "Well, that's convenient. I'll be your night nurse this week." Her head tilted slightly, eyes flicking to the left like she was following a thought. "You were humming when you came in." "I don't think I was." "You used to hum when your mom ironed," she said. "Remember? The sound of fabric crackling? You'd sit on the floor and match your breathing to hers." The pen slipped in my hand. "What did you just say?" Clara blinked once. "You look tired," she said, voice softer. "Don't stay too long in the halls tonight. It watches you when you do." After that, I told myself she was perceptive. Some patients are. They read faces, pick up cues, mirror back whatever they think you want to hear. It's how they anchor themselves. That's all it was. Still, when I got home that morning, I noticed the faint humming sound coming from my apartment. My mom used to hum that exact melody. I hadn't thought of it in years. I shut off the lights and stood in the dark, trying to remember if I'd ever done it in front of Clara. The next night, she was waiting, sitting upright, smiling like a child expecting praise. "I couldn't sleep," she said when I entered. "Too many footsteps." "None of us sleep much here," I said. "I do," she replied. "When I'm not pretending." "Pretending what?" Her eyes didn't blink. "To be you." I tried to laugh again, but it came out flat. "You're not me, Clara." "Not anymore," she said. "But I remember it. The color of your walls, the smell of the candles you light before bed. Cedarwood and vanilla." My throat went dry. I hadn't mentioned that to anyone. "Who told you that?" "You did," she said simply. "Before." That night, I stayed later than usual, rechecking her chart. It was thin. Admission notes, psych eval, a transfer authorization from another facility in Atlanta. But the transfer form was missing a signature. The line where the attending physician's name should have been was blank. At 3:17 a.m., the corridor lights flickered. I heard a door click open. Room 313's door. The sound was unmistakable. I froze. It was down the hall behind the nurse's station, that quiet stretch of linoleum that always smelled faintly of disinfectant and mildew. I called out, "Maintenance? Anyone back there?" No response. Just that steady hum of the lights. I walked slowly, flashlight trembling in my grip. The door to 313 was closed, sign crooked. For a second I thought I saw movement under the frame, like someone shifting their feet. Then nothing. When I turned around, Clara was standing halfway down the hall. Her gown hung loosely, her arms bare. Her smile was still there, faintly lit by the flicker above her. "You shouldn't check on that room," she said. "Clara, how did you get out?" "I didn't," she whispered. "You did." By the time I blinked, she was gone. I found her back in her bed 5 minutes later. Eyes closed, heart rate normal. The restraints were still clipped. The following morning, I mentioned it to Dr. Kelman. He frowned, scribbling something in his notes. "You've been working extra shifts, haven't you?" "Yeah, but lack of sleep can make the mind play tricks, Ava. These patients, they absorb energy. Project it back. It's transference." She knew things she couldn't. She's good at reading people. That's what her file says. It's what keeps her stable. Stable. I didn't feel stable. The next week blurred together. Sleep felt shallow, dreamlike. I'd wake up at home to find my bedside lamp turned on, or my toothbrush moved. Once my phone camera was open in the middle of the night, recording nothing but my empty living room for 47 minutes. I started forgetting small things. Passwords, shifts, where I parked my car. My coworkers noticed. "You okay, Ava?" They'd ask. "You look pale." One night, I found my own handwriting on a patient chart I hadn't touched. The signature line read Ava Donnelly, RN, neat and looping. But I hadn't filled that form. The date was 2 days ahead. When I confronted Clara, she smiled like she'd been waiting. "I'm helping," she said. "You're falling behind. Stop touching my files. They're not yours." "Then whose are they?" She leaned close, voice low enough that I could smell the sterile salt of her skin. "Mine. I just borrowed your name for a while." The tension in my chest turned to something sharp. "You need rest, Clara." She nodded. "We both do." That night at exactly 2:06 a.m., the hospital lost power. The emergency lights failed to come on. For the first time in 12 years, St. Meridian was completely dark. I grabbed my flashlight, heading for the generator room. The beam shook as I moved. Every step echoed back at me, doubled. When I passed 313, the door was ajar. The smell hit first, metallic, wet. My light found the outline of someone crouched inside. "Clara?" Her head snapped toward me, eyes catching the beam like glass. She was barefoot, the hem of her gown soaked. Something dark dripped from her fingers. "You're late for rounds," she whispered. "Room 313's waiting." My breath caught. "You shouldn't be here." "I never left," she said. "You did." When I stepped forward, the room came into focus, walls covered in medical charts, notes pinned like trophies. Every one of them had my name on it, my ID photo, my handwriting, my psych evaluations, pages upon pages of assessments written in looping, perfect cursive, each signed, Dr. Clara Holt. The flashlight slipped, beams scattering across the floor where my own photograph lay torn in half. The part with my eyes was missing. I ran. I don't even remember the sound of my footsteps, just the rhythm of breathing, ragged and uneven, echoing behind me, though I was alone. When maintenance restored the power, room 313 was empty. No blood, no files, no patient. The official report called it a misfiled transfer. Dr. Kelman told me to take a few weeks off. "Get some rest, Ava," he said kindly. "We'll sort it out." But he didn't see what I saw in the security footage they pulled. At 2:06 a.m., during the blackout, the hallway camera caught a brief flicker, one frame of movement before the feed cut. It wasn't Clara walking into 313, it was me. I don't remember doing it. Now, weeks later, I'm back at work. Everyone pretends nothing happened. Room 313's sign has been replaced, under evaluation. The door stays locked. But the night charts still get filled in, perfect handwriting, dated, signed. My name. Sometimes I find notes I don't remember writing. Patient exhibits dissociative behavior. Mirror responses noted. And before dawn, when the lights flicker like they always do, I see my reflection in the window. It blinks a heartbeat before I do. I don't check room 313 anymore, because I know who's inside. I thought it was the easiest job I'd ever take. Babysitting overnight one child, $150 in cash. That was the ad. No background check, no interview, just a single line in an online job board for Lancaster locals. I'd scrolled past dozens of scams that day, my thumb raw from swiping, but something about that post stuck. Maybe it was the bluntness of it, or maybe it was because I was 3 weeks late on rent and desperate enough to ignore the warning signs. I'm Mara Quinn, 23, college dropout, part-time barista, full-time disappointment to my parents. The day I got the job, it was raining, thin gray drizzle that blurred everything. The world felt washed out, quiet. I took that as a sign things were calming down. I was wrong. The address was on a cul-de-sac near the edge of town, one of those neighborhoods that looked new but already felt abandoned. Lawns too neat, houses too similar, even the streetlights buzzed in unison, a sterile, synchronized hum. The Halbrook house was the last one on the lane, 2 stories, pale yellow siding, windows covered with heavy drapes. Light seeped through in dull, rectangular patches. The porch smelled like lemon polish and old rain. When Mrs. Halbrook opened the door, she was already holding the contract. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked like someone trying to remember how to be polite. "You must be Mara," she said, voice tight and rehearsed. "Come in." Her home was immaculate. No clutter, no warmth, a muted palette of beige and gray, the kind of silence that made you aware of your own breathing. There was a faint metallic tang in the air, like a penny pressed to your tongue. I wiped my shoes, nervous. "Thank you for having me." She nodded but didn't smile again. "The job's simple. My son Eli is 6. He's sensitive. He doesn't sleep well. You'll stay until morning. She handed me the contract. I skimmed it, expecting the usual liability nonsense, but one line stood out in bold type. Do not let him see himself in the mirror. I looked up. Is this some kind of sensory thing? Her jaw twitched. Just follow it. No exceptions. There was no humor in her tone. Just the kind of brittle authority people get when they've been scared too long. I nodded, signing without asking more. $150. One night. How bad could it be? Eli was in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the rug, stacking blocks with slow, deliberate care. Pale kid. Blonde hair so light it looked silver under the lamp. His eyes were gray too, washed out, almost colorless. Hi, Eli, I said softly. I'm Mara. Your mom asked me to hang out with you tonight. He didn't look up. You shouldn't stay after the moon comes. I laughed nervously. Why's that? His fingers tightened around the block. Because he comes then. I waited for the punchline. It didn't come. Who's he? Eli lifted his chin slightly and pointed toward the hallway mirror. A tall, old-fashioned piece of furniture with a carved wooden frame, the glass slightly warped. My reflection looked stretched wrong. I told myself he was just a kid with nightmares. Maybe his dad left and he was some stand-in for fear. The usual story. Mrs. Halbrook came down the stairs with her purse in hand. He's already had dinner. No sweets after 9. Keep him upstairs after midnight. Got it. And don't cover the mirror. Her words caught me off guard. Wait, the rule said not to let him see himself. So she hesitated. Just don't touch it. Leave it how it is. Before I could ask more, she was gone. Her car disappeared into the fog. For the first few hours, it was normal enough. Eli and I played cards, watched a cartoon, and by 10, he was yawning. I tucked him into bed, left a nightlight on, and scrolled my phone downstairs until the house grew still. That was when I noticed it. The sound. Whispering. It started faint, like a TV on in another room. I muted my phone, listening. It was coming from the hallway. Eli's voice. I climbed the stairs, heart tight in my chest. Eli? He was sitting on the floor by his doorway, facing the mirror. Hey, I said gently. It's late, buddy. He didn't turn. His lips were moving, whispering softly. I realized he was repeating something, his own words echoed back a half-second later. But the second voice wasn't his. It was lower. Eli, come on, let's go back to bed. He finally turned toward me. His eyes reflected the hallway light strangely, like there was glass between us. He says you shouldn't talk to me, he murmured. Who says that? The one behind you. I spun around. The hall was empty, just my reflection in the mirror. My reflection and something behind it. The glass looked fogged, like breath from the inside. I stepped forward, reaching out to wipe it, but before I touched it, Eli screamed, a sound so sharp it made me flinch. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Eli! I called. I grabbed him, clutching him close. He was trembling so hard his teeth chattered. I could hear movement from the hallway. Soft, deliberate steps that weren't mine. When my phone's flashlight came on, I pointed it toward the mirror. For a moment, I saw hands pressed against the glass. My hands, but they were inside. Pale, reversed, fingertips smeared against the surface as if something was trying to get out. The air felt heavy, thick with static. The light flickered again. The hands were gone. I scooped Eli up and ran upstairs to his room, slamming the door. I called Mrs. Halbrook. She answered immediately, no greeting. Don't move him, she said. Do not move him. What's happening? There's someone. Don't let him near a reflection. He'll follow it. Just stay still. Keep your eyes shut until morning. Her voice cracked on the last word. Then the line went dead. I held Eli close, whispering that it was okay, that it was just a bad dream. But the boy didn't blink. He just stared at the wall and whispered, It's not a dream for him. The rest of the night stretched like wet paper. Every creak sounded like breathing. At some point, I must have blacked out because the next thing I knew, sunlight was leaking through the curtains. The mirror in the hallway was cracked through the center like a frozen scream. Eli was gone. I tore through the house, closets, attic, basement. Nothing. The only sound was the wind. When Mrs. Halbrook came home around 7, she looked calm. Too calm. She carried a small boy in her arms. Same blonde hair, same eyes. "This is Eli," she said simply. I stared at her. What do you mean?" "Eli's gone." She tilted her head. "You must be tired." I pointed at the crack in the mirror. "Something happened last night. That thing, whatever it was." "You signed the contract," she interrupted. Her tone had the finality of a closing door. "You did well. Payment will be in your account by noon." That was the end of it. She turned away, leading the boy, Eli, or someone like him, into the living room. I left before I could see his face again. Outside, the morning looked too bright. I got into my car, hands shaking, and started the engine. I kept telling myself to forget it. Just drive. But then I caught movement in the rearview mirror. A small shape in the back seat. At first, I thought it was a trick of light. Then I heard it soft whispering my name. Over and over like a lullaby unraveling. "Mara. Mara." I didn't turn. I couldn't. My eyes stayed locked on the road even when tears blurred the view. The whispering got louder, closer, until it wasn't just a sound but a vibration crawling under my skin. I glanced up once, just once, and saw his face. Pale. Perfect. Eyes like dull glass. He smiled. Then the mirror cracked, thin fissures spreading like veins. The whisper stopped, but when I blinked, I realized my breath had fogged the glass from the inside. I signed up to help people. I didn't expect to meet the one who would destroy me. When I filled out the volunteer form for Edenvale Correctional Facility, I imagined redemption stories, second chances, maybe a few tearful confessions I could tell my professors about later. I didn't expect the smell. That sterile metallic scent that clings to concrete, bleach, and people who've forgotten what rain feels like. The first time I stepped inside, I felt the air shift. Dense. Watchful. I'm Rachel Dunn, 29. Psychology grad student at SUNY Albany, and for 6 months I've been volunteering as a counseling intern at Edenvale. Every Thursday I'd drive 2 hours upstate, sip burnt coffee from the vending machine, and sit across from men who'd traded their freedom for one bad decision too many. Most of them barely looked at me. Some cried, some flirted out of boredom. But it always ended the same way. "Thank you for listening, Miss Dunn, see you next week." Then came inmate DeForo 29, Caleb Voss. No priors. No listed address. Arrested for walking uninvited into a suburban family's dining room and sitting at their table until police arrived. No threats, no weapon, just silence. When they asked why he did it, he said he was waiting for Rachel. My name. When the warden told me that, I laughed, a shaky sound I immediately regretted. Probably a coincidence, I said, though the word tasted like dust. The first time I saw him, he was already smiling. They brought him into the counseling room, a small, windowless cube with a metal table and 2 plastic chairs. He was tall, maybe early 30s, with dark hair that looked too clean for prison, and eyes that held something, calm but wrong. Not insanity, familiarity. "Good morning," I said, setting my clipboard down. "I'm Rachel." "I know," he said quietly. It wasn't flirtation or mockery. He said it like a fact. I forced a smile. "You must be Mr. Voss." "Caleb," he corrected. "You don't have to pretend we haven't met." "We haven't." He tilted his head, studying me. "You've changed your hair. You used to tuck it behind your ear when you were nervous." I froze. My hand twitched toward my hair before I caught myself. "I think you're mistaking me for someone else." He smiled wider. "No, Rachel. You just don't remember." The way he said it, calm, patient, certain, made the room feel smaller. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Let's talk about why you were in that house." He leaned back, eyes half-lidded. "I was waiting for you to come back." For the rest of the session, he barely spoke. Just watched me, head tilted like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. When I ended early, he whispered, "Thursday's too far away." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, that voice that lingered just a little too long on my name. My apartment was dark except for the glow of my laptop. I checked the volunteer roster. No one else named Rachel. I called my mom, tried to sound casual, asked if she'd ever heard of a Caleb Voss. She hadn't. At 3:12 a.m., my phone rang. "No caller ID," I answered without thinking. Static. Then my name whispered slow. Rachel. I hung up, heart hammering. The call log showed nothing. The next morning I told the warden what happened. He looked exhausted, rubbing his temples. He doesn't have access to a phone. Inmates don't get personal calls. Then how? It was probably a prank, Miss Dunn. Don't let him get to you. But that was the problem. He already had. By the next Thursday, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. Coincidence. Misheard static. But when I entered the counseling room, Caleb was already speaking under his breath, low and rhythmic. What are you saying? I asked. He stopped mid-sentence. You dream about lakes, I stared. Excuse me? You talk in your sleep, he said. Loud. I felt cold all over. How could you possibly? You shouldn't leave your window open. I stood up so fast the chair screeched against the floor. Session's over. As I walked out, he called after me, still calm. I just wanted to finish the song your father never did. I didn't even turn around. But that night I remembered it, the lullaby. The one Dad used to hum before he left. I hadn't thought of it in 20 years. At 3:12 a.m. the phone rang again. This time I let it. The static hissed in waves, then a low hum, soft, almost musical. The lullaby. The next week Caleb's cell was found empty, no broken locks, no open windows. The security feed froze at 3:12 a.m., the same minute my phone had rung every night that week. The warden said it was a technical failure. He looked pale when he said it. The news spread through the facility like rot. Inmates whispering, guards double-checking gates. I stopped volunteering, told myself I needed a break. But my phone still rang. Same time, same silence. 2 days later, I found an envelope in my campus mailbox. No return address. Inside, one piece of paper. Thank you for letting me out. No signature, but I recognized the handwriting. It was mine. I took it to the campus police. The officer squinted, unimpressed. Could be a sick prank. You got any X's? I left before he could finish. That night, I pushed my dresser against the window and slept with the lights on. Around 3 a.m., I woke to soft knocking. Not loud. Delicate fingertips. I told myself it was branches, wind, anything but what it sounded like. But then I saw my reflection in the window. It smiled before I did. I stumbled back, heart slamming, staring as the reflection's lips moved slightly out of sync. It mouthed something I couldn't hear, 3 syllables, slow. Then it leaned closer and I realized the breath fog on the glass was coming from inside. When I looked again, it was gone. I stopped answering my phone. I started leaving campus before dark. I told my professors I was sick, that the drive was too much. But the world didn't stop bending. I'd see Caleb's shape in crowds, a flash of his gray sweatshirt reflected in passing windows. At the grocery store, in my rearview mirror, in the glass of the bus shelter, always watching, never there. My mother visited once. She said I looked tired. You should talk to someone, she said, meaning a therapist. I am, I almost said, but the words caught. That night I recorded myself sleeping just to prove I was imagining things. When I played it back, there was silence for hours. Then at 3:12, a soft creak. A voice, mine, saying, "He's here." Then another voice layered beneath it, identical but deeper. "Thursday's too far away." I smashed my phone against the floor. The next morning, someone had taped a note to my door. Stop fighting it. I knew the handwriting before I even touched it. The police came again after I reported a break-in. They found no forced entry, no fingerprints, no sign of disturbance. The officer looked at me carefully. "You sure you're okay, Miss Dunn?" I wasn't sure of anything. The nights bled together after that. Sometimes I'd wake and find my notebook pages filled in my own handwriting, except it wasn't mine anymore. Letters tighter, sharper, words I didn't remember writing. He lives in the silence between. I started sleeping on the couch, facing away from the window. Once I woke up to humming behind me. The lullaby. I turned slowly, breath shaking. The window was closed. My reflection stared back, still empty-eyed but smiling faintly like it pitied me. I whispered, "What do you want?" Its lips moved. "To stay." And then the glass cracked. Now I don't sleep much. My professors think I dropped out. My friends stopped calling after I stopped answering. Every night, 312 comes and goes, and I sit in the dark listening, waiting. Sometimes I hear knocking again, 3 soft taps like the start of a song. Sometimes the phone rings and I almost answer. Sometimes when I speak, the words come out too smooth, too low, too much like him. My reflection still smiles before I do. And when I try to sing, it finishes the lullaby for me. I used to believe that working in other people's homes was safer than living in my own. It sounds naive now, but cleaning for strangers always felt like control. Other people's messes were predictable. Dust, clutter, wine stains, secrets that stayed silent in drawers. My own life was the chaos I couldn't scrub out. Cleaning gave me order, quiet, the illusion of being invisible in someone else's story. I'm Camille Hart, 37, professional housekeeper in Burlington, Vermont. Most of my clients lived around the lake, second homes for New Yorkers with too much money and too little time. They liked me because I was discreet, efficient, and forgettable. They could leave me in their bedrooms, their safes, their lives, and I'd vanish without a trace when the job was done. That was before the Langfords. Their house sat on the North Shore, 3 stories of glass and dark wood that caught the lake's reflection like a mirror. When I first arrived, the drive up the winding private road smelled like pine and rain. The air was so still it felt suspended. Mr. Langford greeted me at the door, smiling politely, one hand in his pocket. "Mrs. Langford's inside," he said. "She's not feeling well, but she wanted to meet you." He was the kind of man who filled silence easily, his voice low, deliberate, too controlled. His face never fully relaxed when he smiled. Everything about him was precise. Mrs. Langford was sitting by the picture window overlooking the lake. Thin, pale, fragile in that way that makes people call you delicate instead of dying. She looked up at me with watery eyes and said softly, "Thank you for coming. I'm so sorry the house is not what it should be." It was immaculate. "You'll find everything in the supply room," Mr. Langford said. "And one thing, Ms. Hart, please don't touch the locked closet in our bedroom." I nodded because clients always had boundaries. I didn't ask questions. That was part of the job. But even from the first day, the closet unsettled me. It was at the far end of the master bedroom, behind a heavy oak door, the kind of lock that looked older than the house itself. When I vacuumed near it, I could feel the faint vibration under the floorboards, a hum so low it seemed alive. Mrs. Langford caught me looking once. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't open it. Ever." I told her I wouldn't. I meant it. Still, every time I passed that door, I thought I heard something. Breathing, maybe. A faint shift of air that didn't belong to an empty space. A week later, while dusting, I knocked my duster against the frame. From the other side, something knocked back. Once. I froze, waiting. Then, another softer tap. When I asked Mrs. Langford about it, she looked terrified. "Don't tell him," she whispered, "please. He doesn't like when I talk about it." "Who?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a small brass key into my hand. "If I disappear," she said, "clean it out. Burn everything." That night, I lay awake thinking about her voice, how desperate she'd sounded, how the key had felt warm against my palm like it had been held too long. The next morning, Mrs. Langford was gone. Mr. Langford said she'd gone to stay with her sister in Montreal. He smiled as he said it, as if rehearsed. The police confirmed it. No foul play, just a missing person with a passport and a history of anxiety. He gave me a raise the same day. "Things will be quiet for a while," he told me. "I appreciate your loyalty." Loyalty. I didn't know what he thought I owed him, but something about his tone made me stay longer than I should have. Days passed, and the house felt heavier. The lake smell seeped into the hallways, damp, metallic like old coins. The humming behind the closet door grew louder. I stopped vacuuming near it because the floor trembled under my feet. I told myself to quit, to leave the key where it was, to mind my business. But curiosity isn't something you can scrub away. One afternoon, I used the key. The door opened with a sigh, as if relieved. Inside, the smell of bleach hit me first, sharp enough to sting. There were gloves, rolls of duct tape, folded rags. On a low table, a black dress still warm. My fingers brushed the fabric. It pulsed faintly like heat from skin. Then I saw the shelf. Dozens of Polaroids neatly arranged. Women all wearing the same black dress, standing in front of the same lakefront window. Blank expressions, eyes unfocused. Every one of them wore the same gold bracelet. The same one on my wrist, a gift from Mrs. Langford my first week. I stumbled back, bile rising. My shoulder hit the door and it swung wider, creaking. Behind it, something shifted. A faint click. Then another. Polaroid cameras, all of them pointed at me. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran. That night, I packed my things, determined to leave. But when I reached the door, Mr. Langford was standing there, coat draped over his arm, smile easy as ever. "Going somewhere?" he asked. My mother's sick," I said, voice breaking. He stepped closer, closing the door behind him. "You clean so well, Camille. It's hard to find people like you. Mr. Langford, you'll make a fine addition." He said it like a compliment, like a promise. I tried to push past him, but his hand shot out, gripping my wrist. The gold bracelet cut into my skin. "Where is she?" I demanded. "What did you do to your wife?" He smiled, too close now. "You should see the closet." The next thing I remember is the sound of the lake, soft waves slapping against the dock. I must have run, or fallen. I woke up in the guest room, sunlight already dimming. My clothes were damp, my bracelet gone. The closet was locked again. When I called the police, they told me no one by the name Langford owned property on the lake. The address didn't exist in their records. But every week, my paycheck still arrived. Same envelope, same amount, same return address. I stopped cashing them months ago. Sometimes, I drive past the house just to see if it's real. It always is. The window's dark. The same hum I can almost hear from the car. Last week I saw movement inside. Someone dusting the staircase, slow and careful. A new housekeeper, young blonde, wearing a gold bracelet. When she paused to adjust a picture frame, I saw it clearly. My face frozen in a Polaroid behind glass. My own eyes staring back at me from the hallway wall. And just for a second, she looked toward the master bedroom door, head tilted, like she'd heard something knock from the other side. I wanted to warn her. I wanted to scream, but my throat only filled with static. Now, when the night wind comes off the lake, I feel it press against the closet door, the hum rising until it feels like breath. The keyhole glows faintly with light. I watch her through it, the new housekeeper, dusting, folding, humming. I'm waiting for her to hear the knock. I never believed evil could hide behind a polite smile and a clipboard, but that was before Mr. Greer walked into my classroom. It was a Monday morning in late September, the kind of crisp Tennessee day when the air feels cleaner than it should. Like a trick before the cold sets in, I was running late. Coffee spilled on my blouse, lesson plans half-printed, the usual chaos that comes with wrangling 20 first graders at Redwood Elementary. When I reached my room, he was already there. "Morning, Miss Hensley," he said, smiling. "Principal told me to get settled while you parked." He looked ordinary in the most unnerving way, khakis, button-down, neat haircut. The kind of man you forget as soon as he walks by. Yet his smile lingered, stretched just a little too long. He was holding a clipboard, pen poised like he was already taking notes. I should have been grateful. Substitute teachers were hard to find, especially mid-year. But the moment his eyes met mine, something in me stiffened. His gaze didn't feel like looking, it felt like reading. The kids adored him instantly. Within an hour, he knew every name, favorite color, and what each one wanted to be when they grew up. He performed simple magic tricks between lessons. Coins behind ears, rubber bands through fingers. They shrieked with laughter, crowding him like he was some kind of hero. I wanted to like him. God, I did. I wanted to believe he was just another overqualified, underpaid man doing his job. But the way he watched people, me especially, it felt rehearsed. Like he was following a script only he could see. That first day, he borrowed my classroom key. "Just for the day," he said, smiling again. The janitor locked up the supply closet early. I didn't think much of it until the next morning. My desk drawers had been rearranged. Neatly. Obsessively. Paper clips sorted by size, pens lined up. My mug moved half an inch to the left, and my spare lipstick, and the one I kept buried under a stack of worksheets, was open, smeared. When he saw me later, he said, "That's a lovely scent you wear, Miss Hensley." "Lilac, isn't it?" I froze. I only wore perfume at home. That night, I went through every room in my apartment, double-checking locks. I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I placed a chair against the front door before bed. By Wednesday, even the janitor, Harold, had noticed something strange. "Hey, Miss Hensley," he said as I packed up. "You been working late?" "No, why? Light's been on in your room after midnight all week. I figured you were grading papers or something." My stomach turned. I drove back that night, flashlight in hand, to check. The building was dark except for the faint glow from under my classroom door. When I opened it, the lights flickered once, then went out completely. The next day, I asked to see the security footage. The tech guy, Craig, frowned at his screen. "That's weird. Every clip between midnight and 3 a.m., corrupted. Like someone wiped them clean. Can you restore them?" He hesitated. "You sure you want me to?" The way he said it made my skin crawl. The following week, Mr. Greer started giving the kids gifts. Tiny wooden animals, rabbits, foxes, owls, hand-carved, he said, from good oak. The children loved them, clutching them like treasures. But when I looked closer, I saw the initials. Each carving had a child's name etched underneath, and mine, LH, carved deeper than all the rest. "Did you make these?" I asked. He smiled. "Of course. Teaching's a craft, Miss Hensley. I just like leaving something behind." Something behind. That night I dreamed of my classroom door opening. A hand, his, setting one of those carved animals on my desk, pressing its tiny wooden paw into the surface until it left a mark. By morning, I was shaking. I told the principal, Mrs. Jennings, that I wanted him gone. "He's making me uncomfortable," I said. She sighed. "Lauren, the kids adore him. He's temporary. Just until Mr. Wallace's surgery recovery. A few more weeks tops. He's been in my room after hours." Her smile faltered. "Do you have proof?" "No, I didn't." That Friday, we had a field trip scheduled. 2 buses. I took bus 1, Mr. Greer took bus 2. We were headed to the Knoxville Zoo. I checked the roll call twice before departure. 20 children total. My group pulled out first. His bus never arrived. By noon, the zoo staff started asking questions. By 2, the police were called. They found the bus abandoned 2 towns over, parked near a rest stop. All 20 seats empty. No Mr. Greer, no children. My purse sat on the dashboard. They said the onboard camera feeds failed. Corrupted again. The next few days blurred. Search teams, interviews, tears that didn't feel real. Everyone asking the same thing. "What do you remember, Miss Hensley?" I didn't know how to answer. The police suggested trauma, blackout, but there were flashes, faint impressions like film negatives burned into my skull. The hum of the bus engine. A child's laugh cut short. The smell of sawdust. Then, darkness. The school shut down for a week. Grief counselors came and went. Parents blamed me and I couldn't blame them. I blamed myself too. A week later, the first letter arrived, postmarked from nowhere. Each envelope addressed to a child's family, each written in the same looping handwriting. "Miss Hensley is learning new lessons. She's smiling now. The police called it a hoax. People do sick things for attention," the detective said. But I knew that handwriting. I'd seen it on the corner of every carved animal. For months I avoided mirrors, turned off my phone, ignored the knocks at my door at night. My dreams were filled with whispering voices counting to 20 over and over. Then last night I drove past Redwood Elementary for the first time since it happened. The parking lot was full. A new substitute had started. I sat in my car, engine idling, watching through the window. He stood at the front of my old classroom, smiling. Same posture, same calm voice, same eyes. When the children laughed, I could almost hear their echoes from that bus. I got out, my legs trembling, drawn toward the building like a moth to a flame. The air smelled of rain and chalk dust. Inside, the halls looked smaller, fresher paint, brighter lights. My classroom door was open. The wall behind my old desk had been repainted pale blue, but under the light I saw it, faintly carved beneath the new coat of paint. Attendance: 20. My breath caught. My reflection in the window smiled before I did. Somewhere deep inside the building, I heard the sound of a bus engine turning over, and a man's voice, warm and familiar, calling roll, "Lauren Hensley?" My lips moved before I could stop them. Present. I used to think loneliness was my biggest fear. Then I met someone who loved it more than I ever could. I'd been caring for other people's parents for almost 2 decades when I took the job at the Caldwell estate. Live-in caretaker, nothing new, nothing dramatic. A week before, I'd left a nursing home position after a resident died during my shift. Heart attack, they said. But I'd been the one to find her body. Her hand still clutching the air like she'd tried to hold on to something that wasn't there. So when Dr. Thomas Caldwell called about his father, I told myself this would be quieter work, solitude and structure. That's all I ever wanted. Barrow Hill, Maine is one of those towns that looks like it's dying politely. Fog seeps in from the harbor. The air smells like iron and pine, and the houses are so far apart you can almost hear your thoughts echoing. The Caldwell house stood at the top of a slope. Gray shingles, 2 stories, the kind of place that should have been cozy but felt like an apology instead. When I arrived, the driveway was lined with wet leaves. The front porch sagged slightly. Inside, the air was cool, not cold but unnaturally still, like the house was holding its breath. Dr. Caldwell met me in the foyer. Early 40s, handsome in that brittle, sleepless way. His voice was soft, measured. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Monroe." "Elise, please," I said. He smiled faintly, not quite meeting my eyes. "You'll find my father upstairs. He's mostly bedridden, doesn't speak much anymore. Meals at 6 and 10. Sheets changed every other day. Oh," he paused, glancing down the hallway. "One thing, don't move the clock." I followed his gaze. The clock stood against the far wall, taller than me, carved from dark oak, its pendulum gleaming like wet brass. Faces were etched into the wood, tiny, indistinct expressions caught mid-scream or mid-song. I couldn't tell which. "Why not?" I asked. "It keeps the house in rhythm," he said simply, and walked away. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening. The house creaked in the kind of rhythm that made you think of footsteps. Every hour, the clock chimed, not a clear, bright sound, but a heavy metallic groan, like it had to force the noise out of itself. At midnight, it struck 13 times. I sat up, heart pounding. 13, I counted slowly, each chime deeper than the last. When the final strike faded, I heard movement. The faint rustle of sheets from Mr. Caldwell's room. I grabbed my robe and hurried upstairs. He was lying flat, eyes open wide, pupils huge and clouded. His mouth moved, soundless at first, then barely a whisper. "He's home." I told myself it was dementia, hallucination. 93 years old, nearly blind, confused. I soothed him, checked his pulse, adjusted his blankets. But even after I turned off the lamp, he kept staring toward the doorway, his lips trembling in a soundless rhythm that matched the pendulum's swing. The next morning, I mentioned it to Dr. Caldwell over breakfast. He stirred his coffee, not looking up. He talks in his sleep sometimes. He wasn't asleep. Then he was dreaming. Something in his tone, too even, too polished, made me stop asking. Days passed. The weather worsened. Wind rattled the windows at night like impatient hands. The house grew colder, though the thermostat stayed fixed. Mr. Caldwell never spoke again, but every night when the 13th chime came, his eyes would snap open. And I began to hear it too, the faint, deliberate sound of footsteps upstairs. The problem was, no one was supposed to be upstairs. My room was on the main floor, his next door the doctor's office down the hall. The second floor was for storage, he'd said, but sometimes I'd hear drawers open, a chair scraping. On the 4th night I called out, "Dr. Caldwell?" A pause. Then a calm, distant voice answered from above, "It's just the caretaker." My stomach went cold. "I'm the caretaker," I whispered. The footsteps stopped. The next morning, I asked Dr. Caldwell if anyone else lived there. No, he said too quickly. Just us. Then who's upstairs? He smiled. You're overtired, Miss Monroe. The house is old. It creaks. I almost believed him, until I found the needle and thread. It was on the nightstand beside Mr. Caldwell's bed. Silver thread, taut and stained dark near the tip. His lips had small red marks at the corners, healing punctures like something had once been sewn shut. When I asked the doctor, he said nothing. Just looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Don't go into the attic." That night I didn't sleep at all. The clock ticked too loudly, each swing echoing in my chest. At midnight I crept into the hall, flashlight in hand. The pendulum gleamed as it moved, the carved faces catching light in flickers that looked like breathing. At the first chime, I froze. At the 13th, I heard something else. A second chime. From upstairs. 2 clocks, keeping time together. I climbed the stairs slowly, flashlight shaking. The air grew colder with every step. At the landing, a smell hit me. Sweet, chemical, unmistakable. Formaldehyde. The attic door was half open. Inside, the light bulb buzzed faintly. And in the center of the room, sitting perfectly still in a rocking chair, was Mr. Caldwell. His skin was gray and waxy. His hands folded neatly in his lap. His eyes half-lidded, and stitched across his mouth. Black thread, knotted tight. He'd been embalmed. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned. Dr. Caldwell stood in the doorway, holding a needle and a fresh spool of thread. His face was calm, expressionless. He didn't like when people moved the clock, he said softly. The rhythm keeps him content. I stumbled back. He's dead, Thomas. Everyone here is. He said it like it was a kindness, like it explained everything. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running. Just the sound of the clock downstairs striking once, twice again, until it felt like the whole house was breathing with it. When I woke, it was morning. The attic door was shut. The doctor was gone. The police found no trace of embalming fluid, no body, no attic chair. The clock was still there, pendulum swinging. When I tried to explain, they looked at me with pity. Grief response, one said. Caretakers get attached. I quit the job that day, packed what little I owned, left Barrow Hill. But sometimes at night when I can't sleep, I hear it. The same slow rhythm in the walls. Tick, swing, breathe. Last month, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a small brass key. And a note. You forgot to wind the clock. Now I live alone again. Different town, smaller house. I keep telling myself I won't use the key, that it doesn't fit any door I own. But last night I heard something upstairs. A chair creaking in time with the wind. And when I checked the corner of my room, I realized my reflection in the window was moving just a half-second too slow, as if waiting for the next chime. 13. Always 13. I think I finally understand what he meant about the rhythm. It's not the house that needs it. It's me. I never trusted the sound of humming through walls. It started as a faint vibration, a whisper under the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the creaks of my old Denver duplex. The kind of sound you could almost convince yourself was nothing. Almost. I'm Tessa Ward, 33, a freelance illustrator who works too many nights alone, painting strangers' faces for online commissions and listening to the house breathe. My place sat on Oak Ridge Lane, a quiet street where the most exciting thing was the weekly garbage truck or the occasional lost Amazon package. I liked it that way, predictable, boring, safe. My neighbor, Mr. Brantley, lived in the adjoining unit. Mid-50s, tall, lean, always tucked into collared shirts and pressed slacks even when mowing his lawn. He had this polite, old-fashioned way about him. He'd wave every morning at exactly 8:02 a.m. as I opened my blinds. Always the same motion, one slow wave, a nod, then he'd turn back to his garden. Routine, clockwork, comfortable, until the humming. It was late, maybe past midnight. I was sketching at my desk, half listening to a podcast when I noticed it. a soft, low tone, barely audible, threading through the floorboards beneath me. It wasn't mechanical, not the usual rattle of pipes or vents. It was rhythmic, like a voice holding a note that rose and fell, deliberate and alive. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. But when I pressed my ear to the floor, the sound grew sharper. It had direction. It came from under my apartment. The next morning, I caught him in his yard. "Hey, Mr. Brantley," I called, trying to sound casual. "Do you have something running in your basement? I heard a weird humming last night." He looked up from his garden shears, smiling. "You probably hear my dehumidifier. Basements talk in old houses." I nodded, pretending to believe him. But something about that smile stretched a little too long, eyes too still, and made my stomach twist. The thing was, my unit didn't have a basement, and if his did, it shouldn't have been under my floor. That night, the humming came back, louder this time, deep enough that the glass of water on my nightstand quivered. I covered my ears with my pillow, but the sound seemed to move through my bones. The next morning, my cat Miso was gone. The window was still locked, food untouched. Her collar sat neatly on the counter. I searched the neighborhood for hours, calling until my throat hurt, but there was nothing. When I got home, there was a new doormat outside my door, identical to mine, except for one thing. A thin red thread woven through the edge, subtle but deliberate, like someone had stitched it by hand. I assumed I was losing it. Maybe I swapped it by mistake. Maybe the landlord replaced them. But when I lifted it, the floor underneath was damp. Cold. The humming returned that night, faint but constant. I started sleeping on the couch with the TV on, the volume low enough to drown the sound without alerting my nerves. I told myself it was plumbing, or the wind, until the power went out. The whole block went dark. I lit a candle and sat by the window listening to the hum outside, louder now, bleeding through the walls like it was trying to reach me. Then through the rain I saw it, a faint yellow glow between our buildings, low to the ground, flickering like a lantern. When I stepped outside, the air smelled of wet dirt and something metallic. I followed the glow to where our foundations nearly touched. There, half buried under years of overgrowth, was a narrow door. Wood swollen from rain, its hinges rusted. The light came from beneath it, steady and pulsing like a heartbeat. My breath fogged in the cold as I crouched down. "Mr. Brantley?" No answer. Just the humming, louder now, clearly a voice. Curiosity overrode fear, a stupid reflex I wish I could undo. I pulled the door open. The smell hit first. Bleach, old wood, something sweet underneath. The light came from a single bulb hanging over a work table. The basement was immaculate. Shelves lined with jars labeled in precise handwriting. Ash, soil, thread, wax. Tools hung on the wall, arranged by size, gleaming under the pale light. The floor was spotless, concrete polished smooth, and in the center of the room stood a mannequin. It wore my favorite sweater, the gray one with the tiny paint stain on the cuff. Around its neck was Miso's collar. The face was covered in plaster, molded perfectly into my own features. My nose, my mouth, my half-smile caught mid-expression. Behind it hung rows of other masks, each slightly different, each bearing a faint trace of humanity. A chipped tooth, a faint mole, a curl of hair trapped in the plaster. Dozens of them. I stepped back, choking on the smell. Then came the humming again, but this time it was behind me. I turned slowly. Mr. Brantley stood in the doorway, holding a glass jar. Inside, floating in cloudy fluid, was a coil of red thread. "You left this on my doorstep, Tessa," he said softly. "I like keeping things neat." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The candlelight flickered across his face, and I saw something in his eyes. Not rage or madness, but pleasure. Familiarity. He took one slow step forward, still humming. "You shouldn't have come down here." I ran. I don't remember how. The next thing I knew, I was in my bed, daylight burning my eyes. My head pounded. My sweater was gone. So was my phone. The police said he'd moved away overnight. "Packed up quietly," one officer said. "No forwarding address." They found nothing in the basement, no mannequins, no jars, no door between our buildings. My friends told me I'd had a breakdown. Stress, isolation, imagination. I let them believe it because it was easier than the alternative. But at night, when the house is still, the humming returns. Softer now beneath the floorboards. Sometimes I wake to faint vibrations under my mattress, like someone pacing directly below me. Last week, I found a jar outside my door. No label this time, just a coil of red thread floating inside. And last night, I heard my own voice humming with his. Same pitch, same rhythm, perfectly in sync. I tell myself it's a dream. I tell myself he's gone. But deep down, I know he's still keeping things neat. I stopped believing in God long before I started hearing his voice. For years, I thought faith was something that could be unlearned, that you could peel it off like old paint and throw it away. But faith is more like mildew. It waits in the dark until the air gets damp again. I learned that the hard way at St. Bartholomew's. My name is Megan Rourke, 30 years old, divorced, jobless, and lost enough to accept a janitor position at a church I hadn't stepped inside since college. I was a theology major once, back when I thought understanding God meant being close to him. Now I just understood silence. The church stood on the corner of Chestnut and Angel, its bell tower cutting into the Providence fog like a warning. Inside, everything smelled of wax and wood polish with that faint metallic tang that clings to old pipes and older sins. Father Alden was the first person I met there. Late 50s, kind voice, eyes too soft to be trusted. He shook my hand longer than necessary and said he admired people who served the church in practical ways. When he learned I'd studied theology, he asked if I'd been to confession lately. I told him I wasn't Catholic anymore. He smiled. The booth still listens, even if you don't. I laughed, but something in his tone stayed with me. Most nights I worked alone after evening mass. The church would empty, the doors would lock, and it was just me, the echo of my footsteps and the hush that settles when faith goes to sleep. I'd sweep the aisles, polish the pews, dust the gold-edged Bible by the altar. The rhythm was comforting. Clean, quiet repeat, until the voices started. The first night I heard them, I thought it was wind through the pipes, low, steady murmuring coming from the back of the sanctuary. I followed the sound to the confessional, the old wooden booth tucked beneath a stained glass window of St. Peter. The air near it felt thick, like breathing through velvet. The voices were soft, pleading, words slipping in and out of clarity. I crouched beside the door, listening. Forgive me. Please, forgive me. I yanked the door open. The booth was empty. My pulse wouldn't slow. I left the mop where it was and went home early, telling myself I'd imagined it. But the next night it happened again. Same hour, same tone. I pulled out my phone and started recording, pressing it against the door until my arm shook. When I played it back, the file was blank. Not silent, blank. As if it had been erased mid-recording. All that remained was a single whisper backward, distorted, stay. I deleted it, but I couldn't delete the feeling. The next morning, I told Father Alden what I'd heard. He smiled, that same patient smile. Sometimes the church remembers voices long after they're gone. Buildings have souls too. You're saying it's haunted. I'm saying it's listening. He walked away, leaving the faint scent of incense and something sharper. Iron, maybe. Over the next week, the confessional became my obsession. I'd finish cleaning early just to stand near it, waiting for the murmurs to begin. They always came around midnight, just after the bell struck 12. The words were clearer now. Not prayers, not Latin, just confessions. I killed him. I buried her. Help me. Each voice sounded different, but the tone, the guilt, was the same. One night, I found a note tucked under a pew. Folded neatly, paper yellowed at the edges. On it, in neat handwriting, "I know what you did." I froze. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echo off the walls. I ran to the rectory, found Father Alden in his study. "Someone's playing games," I said, shoving the note toward him. "You need to check the cameras." He glanced at it, then at me. "There are no cameras in the sanctuary. We believe in privacy here." "That's insane." He smiled again. "Some truths don't like being recorded." When I returned to my apartment that night, there was another note waiting under my door. Same paper, same handwriting, but this one was worse. "You don't have to hide it anymore, Megan. I forgive you. I didn't sleep." Every sound, the radiator hiss, the ticking clock, felt like a heartbeat not my own. I tried to remember if I'd ever told Father Alden about my ex-husband, about the fights, about the restraining order that never got filed. But no, I'd never told him his name. The next evening, I found fingerprints inside the priest's side of the confessional. Fresh, deep grooves in the varnish, like someone had clawed at the wall. And the smell, sweet, rotten, metallic. I pushed open the divider. No one there. Just a small tape recorder still playing. The voice on it was male, trembling, broken, confessing to murder, naming the victim, describing the knife, the time, the blood. The name was Aaron Rourke, my ex-husband. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so badly I dropped the recorder and the tape kept spinning, spilling words into the air like static. Behind me, a shadow stretched across the floor. Father Alden stood by the altar, eyes glazed, mouth curled in something like joy. "You came to confess at last," he said softly. "But I already forgave you." I stumbled back, heart slamming, words caught in my throat. I never. He took a step closer. "We're all guilty, Megan. The church only waits for you to admit it." Something in his tone shifted, too calm, too certain. His gaze flicked toward the confessional where the recorder still hissed. "He came here first, you know. Your husband. He begged to understand why you stopped answering his calls." I ran. I don't even remember getting home. The next morning I quit. I told the diocese I'd found another job, that I was moving out of state. They didn't ask questions. But I can't escape the sound. Every church bell that rings now, every Sunday sermon that leaks from a passing radio, carries it. The same whisper from that recording. Stay. Sometimes I hear my name woven into it, soft and patient like a hand resting on the back of my neck. Last week, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of St. Bartholomew's stationery. One line written neatly across the center. Confession hours never end. Now I avoid churches. I cross the street when I see a steeple, but it doesn't matter. The voice follows. Sometimes when I sleep, it hums through the walls like a prayer I once knew by heart. Sometimes it sounds like Father Alden. Sometimes it sounds like Aaron. And sometimes when I wake in the dark, my knees already pressed into the floor, I realize I've been whispering back, "Forgive me." I never thought I'd be the kind of person to download a dating app, but loneliness does strange things to you. Back in the late 1990s, it wasn't even apps yet, just glitchy websites, clunky message boards, chat rooms where you prayed the person on the other end wasn't a 40-year-old man pretending to be someone else. But I was 19, freshly out of high school, still fumbling to figure out who the hell I was. A little backstory. I grew up in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio. My parents divorced when I was 12, and I spent most of my teens bouncing between mom's house and dad's one-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and takeout. I wasn't popular in school. I was that quiet girl in oversized sweaters, the one who wrote bad poetry in the margins of her math homework and kept her head down in the hallways. When graduation came, most of my friends left for universities out of state, chasing futures, dorm rooms and new lives while I stayed behind, working late shifts at a grocery store and saving for community college. I told myself it was temporary, but deep down I wanted more. I wanted someone who actually saw me. That's when I stumbled across a website called True Match. It was clunky as hell. Profiles looked like badly formatted resumes, and photos took ages to load on dial-up. Still, it felt like magic, a way to find people by interests, not just by whoever happened to make eye contact in the frozen food aisle. That's how I met Aaron Pierce. He said he was 21 at first, later 23. Eventually, I realized the number shifted depending on who was asking. His photo showed him leaning against a car, leather jacket, lazy grin, the kind of smirk that made my stomach flip back then. His messages came smooth, confident, a little too confident, but I was so hungry for attention I ignored the warning bells. The first time we met in person, I was 15. He picked me up at a gas station near my mom's house because I didn't want her to see. Looking back, that should have been the first red flag, a grown man insisting on secrecy. But at the time I told myself it was romantic, like some forbidden love story. We became this strange on and off summer thing. He'd vanish for months, then reappear with an apology and a smile that made me forget why I was angry in the first place. Nothing serious, not until my senior year. It was December, snow piled high against the curbs. I was walking home from my after-school job when his car slowed beside me. "Hop in, Maddie," he said, rolling down the window. His voice had this smoothness like honey poured over glass. That night, parked beneath a flickering streetlight, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. God, I wish I could go back and shake that girl, tell her to run. By the time I turned 18, Aaron had convinced me to move in with him. "It'll be easier," he said. "We'll build a life together." I thought that meant partnership, someone to share bills with, laugh with, grow with. But what it really meant was me working 2 jobs, stocking shelves by day and waiting tables by night, while he quit every job he ever got after a week, claiming the bosses are all out to get me. The first fight was over something stupid, a dress I wore to class once. He accused me of showing off for other guys. When I tried to laugh it off, he grabbed my wrist so hard it left a bruise. Then he cried afterward, saying, "I just love you too much, Maddie. I can't stand the thought of losing you." And I forgave him, over and over, until forgiveness became survival. When our son Eli was born, I thought maybe things would change. Aaron cried when he held him for the first time, kissed my forehead, swore he'd do better. And for a while he did. He'd wake for late-night feedings, sing lullabies off-key, whisper that we were a real family now. But sweetness never lasted with Aaron. The cruelty crept back in. First the words, then the hands. A slap here, a shove there, then the choking. His fingers tight around my throat whenever I said something he didn't like. He'd always apologize after, whispering, "You know I'd never really hurt you, Maddie. You just make me so mad sometimes," except he did hurt me, again and again, until parts of me stopped feeling anything at all. It was February, the kind of bitter cold that made the windows rattle and the pipes groan. Aaron came home late that night and with a friend. I'll call him Tyler. I was sitting on the carpet with Eli, stacking bright plastic blocks, his laughter filling the room each time he knocked them over. The air smelled faintly of applesauce and baby shampoo. For a moment, life almost felt normal, until the door creaked open. Aaron walked in, the sharp scent of beer hitting me before his voice did. "Hey, babe," he called out too loudly, dropping his coat on the floor. "Look who I brought." Behind him stood Tyler, awkward smile tugging at his lips. He looked nervous, like he already knew what kind of man Aaron really was. At first, everything seemed fine. They cracked open a couple of beers, shared laughs about some inside joke I didn't understand. I stayed quiet, keeping Eli close, my stomach tightening with that familiar dread. Then Aaron's tone shifted, too sweet, dripping with sarcasm. "So, Maddie," he said, leaning against the counter. "You like having the house to yourself, huh? Bet you don't miss me at all when I'm gone." My heart skipped. That voice, honeyed and cold, always came right before the storm. "I didn't say that," I whispered, my fingers trembling against Eli's back. Tyler shifted uneasily. "Man, chill out." She didn't mean anything by it. Aaron ignored him. His eyes locked on me, his smile stretching thin and cruel. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see the way guys look at you?" "Aaron, please," I murmured, desperate to keep my voice calm. "Not tonight." "The baby—" "Shut up," he snapped. Then lower, darker. "I'll beat you like a man." My throat closed. I clutched Eli tighter, whispering, "Please don't, please." Aaron's eyes flicked to Tyler. "Take the kid." I froze. But I knew, God, I knew. Eli would be safer in Tyler's arms than mine. My hands shook as I passed him over. "Please," I whispered to Tyler, barely breathing. "Just keep him safe." The second Eli was gone, Aaron lunged. His fist tangled in my hair, yanking me to the ground. Pain bloomed white-hot as his knuckles met my face again and again. I tasted blood, warm and metallic, spilling down my chin. I crawled toward the phone on the side table, every movement slow and clumsy, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I made it to the second digit before Aaron ripped the receiver away and smashed it into my cheek. "You call the cops on me?" he roared, his face twisted, eyes wild. "I'll kill you, Maddie. Do you hear me? I'll kill you and not think twice." His hands clamped around my throat. My vision swam, darkness blooming at the edges. My lungs screamed for air. Through the blur, I saw Tyler frozen, clutching Eli tight, terror etched across his face. "Go," I croaked. "Get help," but Aaron barked, "You move, I kill you both." I stopped struggling. A strange calm washed over me. This was it, I thought. He's really going to do it, then pounding. Loud, urgent, "Police!" Aaron froze. His chest heaved as he glared down at me. "Don't you say a word," he hissed, then straightened, wiping sweat from his face. He opened the door. "Evening, sir," one of the officers said. "We got a hang-up call from this number. Everything all right?" Yeah, Aaron replied smoothly, too smoothly. Baby was crying. My girl just overreacted. I stumbled into view. Blood streamed from my split lip. One eye was already swelling shut. The officer's face hardened. "Ma'am, are you okay?" That was all it took. The cops pushed past Aaron, forcing him against the wall while another helped me sit down. "You're safe now," he said softly, but I didn't feel safe. Not yet. At the hospital, one officer lingered by my bed, voice low. "I've seen a lot of injuries in this job," he said. "Yours? It's a miracle you're alive." Aaron was arrested that night. From jail, he called me, his voice calm, almost casual. "Why'd you do this to me, Maddie?" he asked. Not an apology, not anger, just disbelief that I'd finally stopped protecting him. He was sentenced to 26 days in jail. 26, that was all. But before he could serve them, he vanished. For months, he stalked me. Blocked numbers, strange cars outside my work, the sensation of being watched no matter where I went. I lived in constant fear, jumping at shadows, sleeping with the lights on. Then one day the calls stopped. I found out later why. He'd moved on, to another woman. I tried to warn her. God, I tried. She didn't believe me. And one night, she didn't survive. He strangled her in her apartment, just like he'd promised he'd do to me. Aaron Pierce is in prison now. Life sentence. No parole. And even though I know he can't touch me anymore, I still wake some nights gasping, my throat burning with the memory of his hands. I live with guilt. Guilt that I survived and she didn't. That my silence in those early years might have let him keep hurting women. But I also live with relief. Relief that Eli never saw me die on that living room floor. Relief that, for once, the police arrived in time. Relief that I'm still here to tell this story, because if I hadn't left him when I did, I know, without a single doubt, it would have been me. I never thought I'd actually download Tinder. It always seemed like one of those apps people joked about, but secretly judged you for using. I grew up in a small city called Riverton, where gossip travels faster than the morning church bells. You can't grab milk without running into someone who remembers your middle school braces. That's part of why leaving for college felt like freedom. Finally, a chance to exist without every move being dissected. I'm 19 now, a freshman at Ashwood University, a mid-sized campus tucked into the hills about an hour from home. College has been exactly what people said it would be. Late-night study sessions that blur into sunrise, cheap ramen eaten straight from the pot, and endless roommate conversations about everything from mascara hacks to who's secretly hooking up with who. For context, I've always been the kind of girl people notice even when I don't want them to. In high school, guys asked me out for bragging rights and some girls hated me on sight. I'm not being conceited, it's just the truth. My mom used to warn me, "You need to be careful, Ava. People will want things from you just because of how you look." I'd laugh it off every time. She worried too much. It all started one Thursday night in our dorm. Hannah and Jess, my roommates, were sprawled on the futon, scrolling through their phones while I sat hunched at my desk finishing an essay. "Ava," Hannah blurted, grinning, "you would kill it on Tinder." I laughed without looking up. "Please, that's literally the last thing I need." "No, I'm serious," Jess said, tossing me her phone. "Look at these creeps messaging me. Half can't spell and the rest think dog filter selfies are hot. You'd probably get 100 matches in an hour." "Not interested," I muttered, fingers still clacking on the keyboard. They didn't drop it. For 30 relentless minutes, they teased and pleaded until Hannah finally snatched my phone, downloaded the app herself, and started swiping through my Instagram for photos. She picked one of me in a yellow sundress, one with smoky eye makeup, and one laughing at a coffee shop. Within minutes of going live, my phone began buzzing nonstop. "See?" Jess grinned. "Told you. You're the hot one. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help laughing as the notifications piled in. Some messages were cliché. Hey gorgeous, those eyes though, wid tonight? Others were disgusting. I ignored most of them. But swiping through became a nightly game. Mocking bios, rating selfies, joking about which guy looked like he lived in his mom's basement or had a secret family in Idaho. It felt harmless, silly fun, until 2 nights later. That's when I got a message from a profile named Bleeding Muse. No photo, just a black and white sketch of a rose dripping what looked like ink. His bio was blank except for one sentence. His first message read, "I saw you. You're brighter than the moon and darker than sin." I laughed out loud. What is this? A Hot Topic poem from 2007? Hannah leaned over my shoulder. Oh my God, Ava, that's so cringe. Block him. But something about it, its weird confidence, made me pause. I typed back, smooth. You write that in every girl's DMs? The reply came instantly. No, only you. That should have been the red flag. Instant replies. Too intense. But instead I showed Jess and we joked about how desperate he sounded. I didn't block him. Over the next few days he sent paragraphs, melodramatic poetry, bleeding metaphors, sketches he claimed to draw himself. One was of a girl with long hair standing beneath a streetlight. The caption said, "She doesn't see me, but I see her." Creepy, I muttered, tossing my phone onto the futon. Tell him to chill, Hannah said, half laughing. It turned into a weird form of entertainment. I'd read his over-the-top messages in a fake, sultry voice while Jess and Hannah cackled. Just some angsty wannabe artist, we figured. Then the drawings got darker. One night he sent a photo of a crumpled piece of paper covered in smeared writing. My name scrawled over and over in something reddish-brown. Looks like fake blood, I said uneasily. Jess frowned. Ava, that's not funny anymore. You need to unmatch him. Oh, I did. I unmatched him and deleted the chat. I thought that was it. It wasn't. The next evening, my WhatsApp buzzed. Unknown number. One message. It was him. Same username. Same style. Same sick poetry. Do you know how crazy I am for you? I'd bleed just to prove it. I froze. My throat went dry. How the hell did he get my number? Hannah glanced over my shoulder, color draining from her face. Ava, delete that now. But I didn't. Maybe it was anger. Maybe fear disguised as defiance. Maybe I just needed to feel like I still had control. I typed back before I could talk myself out of it. I bet you aren't man enough to actually show your face. Loser, I hit send when 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was 12:34 a.m. I wasn't even supposed to be at the dorm. Campus was empty for the holidays and I'd gone home, alone. My mom was away on a work trip, her suitcase still by the front door. The sound of the chime echoing through the quiet house made my blood run cold. I moved down the stairs barefoot, heart pounding so loud it filled the silence. The old steps creaked under my weight. I hesitated at the door, breath trembling, and leaned toward the peephole. No one. Just the porch light cutting through the fog. I let out a shaky exhale. It's fine, I told myself. Maybe a package, maybe a random delivery. I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. Cold air hit my skin. No person, no car, nothing, just the distant hum of crickets. Then I looked down. A red envelope lay on the doormat. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It smelled metallic, sharp, sour like rusted pennies. Inside was a single folded paper, the words jagged, written in something thick and brownish red. Did you miss me? I slammed the door and twisted the lock, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I think someone's stalking me, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. He was outside. He left me something. The dispatcher's voice was calm but firm. Stay on the line with me, ma'am. Can you move to a safe part of the house? I backed away from the door, turning off every light one by one, hoping whoever was out there would think the house was empty. My chest ached from how hard I was breathing. I strained to hear any movement, any breath that wasn't mine. Then I made the worst mistake of my life. I peeked through the kitchen window into the backyard. He was there. A man stood in the middle of the yard, shirtless, motionless, his body pale in the moonlight. His eyes were locked on mine. My knees almost gave out. I grabbed the nearest flashlight and flicked it on, the beam shaking in my trembling hand. It hit his chest first, and I saw it. My name. Ava, carved into his skin. Fresh blood oozed from the letters, running down his torso like red tears. I couldn't breathe. Slowly, I moved the light upward to his face, and my stomach dropped into nothing. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mark, my childhood best friend's stepdad, the same man who used to drive us to soccer practice. The same one who once hugged me too long, the same one who once commented on my Instagram, "Beautiful, just like your mom." He smiled now, wide, unnatural, proud, like a kid showing off something he'd made just for me. I dropped the flashlight, screamed. I ran upstairs, slammed my bedroom door and locked it, pressing myself into the corner with the phone still in my hand. "Ma'am, stay calm," the dispatcher said through the speaker. "Officers are on the way. Don't open the door for anyone but the police." I sat there shaking, listening, counting every breath. It felt like hours before I finally heard the sirens. When the police arrived, they searched the yard. He was gone. All they found were bloody footprints leading into the woods behind our house. I gave them everything: the Tinder screenshots, the WhatsApp messages, the red envelope. They investigated, but nothing tied directly to Mark. The profile was deleted, the number untraceable. When they went to question him, they found out he'd quit his job months earlier, left his family, disappeared. My childhood best friend won't even look at me now. Her mom swears she didn't know. It's been weeks. I still check every lock twice before bed. Every creak makes my heart stutter. A few nights ago, I woke to scratching at my window, faint, deliberate. When I looked out, I swear I saw a shadow move away. The next morning, there was a white rose on the porch, its petals soaked in blood. Tied to it was a note: "The blood may fade, but I never will." This weekend, I'm filing for a restraining order. My mom begged the police to keep watch to arrest him if he resurfaces, but I know he's out there watching, waiting. And every night, I wonder if the next knock at my door will be the last sound I ever hear. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off an app, but then again, I never thought I'd be single at 32 either. Life has a way of gut-punching your ego when you least expect it. Just 6 months ago, I was sharing an apartment with my girlfriend of 4 years, Julia, in a quieter corner of Cleveland, not far from Lake Erie. I thought we were building something real, marriage, maybe even kids. But when you live with someone long enough, the cracks don't stay hidden. For Julia, my long hours in IT were the problem. For me, it was the way she started drifting. Late nights at the office. A new perfume, no, not perfume, cologne, faint but distinct, not mine. The night she finally admitted she'd been seeing her coworker friend, I didn't yell or throw things. I just packed a duffel, grabbed my laptop, and moved into a one-bedroom rental across town. Wasn't heartbroken in the movie sense. No tear-stained ice cream nights or sad playlists echoing through empty rooms. But there was this quiet hollowness. Nights especially were brutal. That's how Tinder happened. At first, I told myself it was just for distraction. Swipe left, swipe right, trade a few dry jokes, maybe grab a drink if conversation didn't crash. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just something that made me feel like a person again, not a failure collecting dust. Most of the women I met felt the same. Drinks, laughter, polite goodbyes, nothing that stuck. Then, about 4 months ago, I matched with Elena. Her profile stopped me mid-scroll, not because she was model gorgeous, but because her photos had soul. None of the usual mirror poses or vacation selfies. They looked intentional, like someone behind the lens actually felt something. One shot caught her laughing at a street fair, lights blurring behind her. Another showed her silhouette against the lake at dusk. The last was black and white. Elena in a cafe, chin on her hand, eyes lost somewhere beyond the glass. Her bio was simple. Writer. Coffee addict. Lover of black and white photography. Always chasing stories. That last line hooked me. Chasing stories. We matched on a Tuesday night. Me. So, who takes your pictures? You've got a good eye. Elena. Guilty. Self-timer and stubborn patience. Photography's my therapy. Me. Seriously? Self-timer? They look like magazine covers. Elena. That's the goal. The conversation flowed easily. No half-hearted emojis or one-word replies. She asked questions, teased me, shared stories about her favorite authors, even wanted to know my worst client horror story in IT. For the first time in months, I caught myself grinning at my phone like an idiot. By Thursday, she invited me to dinner at her apartment. I hesitated. Meeting someone in their home for a first date wasn't exactly textbook safe, but then she said she wanted to show me some of her unpublished work. Photos I never post online. I don't let just anyone see them, she wrote. But you seem like someone who'd understand. I don't know if it was curiosity or flattery that won, but I agreed. It was a cold Saturday evening when I drove across town. Elena lived in an older brick building near Lakewood, the kind with narrow halls and faint smells of other people's dinners clinging to the air. Onions, curry, old carpet cleaner. I double-checked the address she'd sent, surprised. The place looked so ordinary it was almost invisible. She buzzed me in. When I reached her floor, the door was already cracked open. Elena stood there smiling. She was shorter than I expected, with shoulder-length dark hair tucked behind her ears and a long cardigan draped around her frame. "You made it," she said warmly. Her voice was soft, steady, with that calm confidence people either fake or are born with. "Of course," I said, smiling. Couldn't pass up the chance for a home-cooked meal. She laughed, quiet, unforced. "Let's hope it's edible." Inside, her apartment was spotless, minimalist to the point of unnerving. White walls, black furniture, a couple of green plants near the window, each one perfectly symmetrical like part of a set. But what really filled the space were the photos. Black frames lined every wall, dozens of black and white portraits. Not the playful, soft ones from her profile. These were raw, intimate. Each face caught mid-emotion like the moment before a confession. Some smiled faintly. Others looked startled, haunted even. There was something unsettling about how close the camera seemed to have been. I remember standing there, my breath catching, realizing that every photo seemed to look back. One photo showed a man smoking alone on a porch, the shadows slicing across his face like bars. Another was of a woman brushing her teeth, caught mid-motion, toothpaste foam spilling over her lips. A child sleeping on a sofa, a blanket half slipped to the floor, then one that made me pause. An older woman at her vanity, half-dressed, frozen mid-expression, like she'd just heard something behind her. "Wow," I said, trying to sound casual even as something in my gut tightened. "Your models really know how to pose. Looks so natural." Elena smiled faintly, tilting her head. "They're not models." I let out a small laugh, waiting for the punchline that didn't come. "Wait, seriously? Then how do you capture moments like this?" "Through windows," she said simply. The words hung there, light as dust. "Secretly," she added, her voice calm, steady, like she was describing a recipe. "People are their most honest when they don't know they're being watched." For a second, I just stared at her, searching her face for a smirk, any hint of irony. There wasn't one. Her eyes stayed on mine, steady, proud. I forced a laugh that sounded too high, too thin. "That's risky." "It's worth it," she said, sipping her wine. "Real emotion can't be posed. Fear, trust, loneliness. They only exist when someone thinks they're alone." A chill crawled slowly up my spine. Still, I followed her to the small dining table. She poured the wine, deep red, fragrant, and served pasta in delicate white bowls. The smell was rich and buttery, but my appetite was gone. The photos seemed to press in from every wall, each pair of eyes watching, silent and knowing. Elena talked easily, like nothing was wrong. "So," she asked between bites, "do you have family here?" "Not really," I said, swirling my wine but not drinking. "Favorite movie?" Zodiac, probably." "I like mystery." Her lips curved slightly. "Me too." Her gaze drifted past me again, not quite at me, more like she was studying the light hitting my face. My pulse kicked up. "Has anyone ever caught you?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. "Once," she said after a pause. She took a slow sip, her expression softening into something almost nostalgic. She was furious, but I apologized and made it up to her. "How?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled, gentle, secretive. "It doesn't matter." My gut screamed to get out. I thanked her for dinner, mumbling something about an early morning. I stood, but before I could reach the door, she stepped in front of it, quiet, graceful, her hand on the knob. "Wait," she said softly. "Before you go, I want to show you my masterpiece." My stomach twisted. She turned and walked down a narrow hallway, motioning for me to follow. I hesitated, then slipped the fork from the table into my sleeve. Ridiculous, but it made me feel less helpless. At the end of the hall stood a locked door. Elena pulled a small key from her cardigan pocket. Even before the lock turned, a rancid smell leaked through, thick, chemical, and sweet like rotting flowers. When the door creaked open, the world tilted. A dim yellow bulb swung overhead, casting a sickly cone of light. In the center of the room sat a wooden chair, and on it, a woman. For a second, I thought she was alive. She sat perfectly upright, wearing a red swimsuit, her eyes wide open. But her skin, oh God, her skin was gray and taut, her limbs puffed and veined like marble. Her jaw twitched, and for one awful heartbeat, I thought she was about to speak. Then her mouth fell open, and a stream of maggots spilled onto the floor. I dropped the fork. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Elena whispered behind me. Her voice trembled, not with fear but pride. I watched her for weeks before I took her. Look at that expression, fear and trust captured forever. My throat closed. My brain clawed for any rational explanation. A wax model, a film prop, something. But the stench was real. The low buzz of flies was real. The slow drip of fluid hitting the tile was real. Then, with a faint wet sound, a piece of the woman's cheek sloughed off and slid down her face like damp paper. I screamed. Elena grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Don't be scared," she said quickly. "I can fix her. I'll glue it up. You understand me, don't you?" I tore free and bolted. I don't remember the hallway or the stairs, just the taste of bile and the sound of my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I burst into the street, gasping, waving at the headlights of a passing car. A couple pulled over as I screamed for help. The police arrived minutes later. They stormed the apartment, but Elena was gone. The woman's body was still there. The photos still lined the walls. My half-eaten plate of pasta sat untouched on the table. Neighbors said she'd only lived there a few months. Paid cash, kept to herself. No one knew her real name. The police searched for weeks, nothing. A month later, I got a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single black and white photograph. It was me, sitting at a cafe with my co-worker. Taken through the window. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off a dating app. 2 years earlier, I would have laughed and said I wasn't that desperate. But by September 2022, I was living in a small Minnesota town called Pine Grove, where nothing ever happened, and everyone already knew everyone else's business. I was 16 then, a restless high school junior, tired of the same hallways, the same faces, the same conversations. My parents were strict but not unfair, the kind of strict that comes from love. My mom worked night shifts at the local hospital. My dad was a contractor who left before sunrise most days. They trusted me because I'd never given them a reason not to. My grades were fine, I worked weekends at a coffee shop, and I wasn't into parties. But as the summer faded and school started again, something hollow settled inside me. Everyone around me had someone. A boyfriend, a crush, late-night texts that made them smile at their phones. I wanted that too. That's how I ended up downloading an app called True Match. At first it was awkward. Most of the guys were from nearby towns, too pushy, too weird, or only after one thing. I almost deleted it. Then I matched with a boy named Tyler Reeves, 17. Lived one town over in Milford. Said he'd left high school early and was taking classes at the local community college. His profile was simple. Sitting on a porch with a dog, leaning against a car, one mirror selfie in a hoodie. Average. Maybe a little shy. But his messages were what caught me. The first thing he wrote wasn't "Hey" or "You're cute." It was, "You look like someone who listens before they speak." That's rare, am I right? I laughed out loud when I read it. It was oddly specific, kind of dorky. "Maybe," I replied, "or maybe I just don't like wasting words." "Then I already like you," he sent back. Most girls just ghost or send emojis, and somehow that was the start. We talked more. He said he'd actually gone to Pine Grove High for a year before transferring after some drama with teachers. When I asked what kind of drama, He admitted he'd been caught borrowing essays online. Plagiarism, basically. But he laughed it off, said it wasn't serious. Something about that didn't sit right. Schools don't usually expel people for harmless mistakes, but I let it slide. Tyler started offering to pick me up after my cafe shifts. I didn't have a license yet, and he said he liked keeping me company. At first, it felt almost brotherly. He joked, told dumb stories, bought me milkshakes. Once, he even showed up during a thunderstorm to drive me home so I wouldn't have to walk. But the way he looked at me sometimes, it wasn't brotherly. By late September, the air turned sharp with cold, the trees bleeding red and orange along the streets of Pine Grove. A girl from school, Brianna, threw a big house party while her parents were gone. Everyone was going, even the quiet ones. I almost didn't, but Tyler texted, "Come with me, I'll drive." That night, when his car pulled up outside my house, he smiled through the window. "You look amazing." I glanced down at my outfit, just jeans and a jacket. "It's nothing fancy." "Trust me," he said softly. "You don't need fancy." The party was chaos, music shaking the walls, bodies pressed together, the air thick with beer and perfume. I spent most of it in the kitchen chatting with friends while Tyler hovered nearby. He didn't drink, said he liked to stay clear-headed. I thought that was mature at first, until I realized his eyes never left me. Every time I turned, he was already watching. When things finally started winding down, I found him by the door. "Can you give me a ride home?" I asked. His answer came too fast. Of course. The drive home was quiet at first, just the hum of the tires on the cold asphalt and the faint crackle of the radio. My breath fogged the passenger window. The silence pressed between us until Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Hey, listen," he said, his tone softer than usual. "I think you and I should go out sometime." My stomach dropped. I'd been waiting for this. "Tyler," I tried to sound kind. "I'm sorry. I just don't feel that way. I really like hanging out with you, but only as friends." His jaw flexed, a muscle ticking just below his temple. "Friends? Huh. After everything I've done for you, all those rides, all that time, I never asked for... I offered you gas money, remember?" I cut in quickly. "You insisted on helping." He looked at me then, half hurt, half angry. For a moment I thought he might say something cruel, but instead he forced a thin smile. "Right. No worries, friends." I exhaled, relief and guilt tangling inside me. "Thanks for the ride," I murmured, slipping out of the car. Inside, the house was dark and still. My parents were asleep. I changed into pajamas, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed. Exhaustion pulling at me. I'd just closed my eyes when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from a girl I barely knew, someone who'd been at the party. My pulse quickened as I opened it. It was a long paragraph. "Hey, I don't know you well, but I thought you should know Tyler's been bragging tonight. He showed people photos of you sleeping." I froze. Then came the images, screenshots. My room. My bed, me lying there unaware. Taken through my window. A cold wave rushed through me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I turned toward my window. The blinds were open. The latch unlocked. He could have been standing out there, watching me whenever he wanted. My hands shook as I typed, fingers trembling over the screen. Me. Never contact me again. Almost instantly, his reply appeared. "Tyler, wait, you don't understand. I wasn't trying to scare you. I just wanted to keep you safe. Watching you sleep, it felt peaceful." I stared at the words, my throat dry. Then I typed back, each letter hard and sharp. "Me, lose my number. Don't ever speak to me again." I hit block and threw my phone onto the bed. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. Eventually, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass. I jolted upright. My room was dark except for the pale light of the street lamp filtering in through a hole where my window used to be. A shadow stepped through, shards crunching beneath his shoes. "You've got to be kidding me," I gasped, scrambling out of bed. The figure lunged. His foot slipped on the glass, sending him forward, and that's when I saw it, the knife glinting in his hand. "Tyler," I whispered, my voice cracking. My throat felt like it was closing. He pushed himself up, eyes wild, breath ragged. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," he rasped. "We were supposed to be together." I screamed and bolted for the hallway. He came after me, but the fall had slowed him. My dad's door flew open. "What the hell's going on?" he shouted, blinking into the dark. "It's him!" I screamed. "It's Tyler, he's in my room, he's got a knife!" Dad didn't hesitate. He charged past me, slamming into my room. The light flicked on. The window gaped open. Tyler was gone. The police arrived within 10 minutes, sirens cutting through the night. Paramedics, too. It wasn't until they wrapped my feet that I realized I was bleeding. The glass had sliced them open. My skin was cold, my words jumbled as I tried to explain. At the hospital, I learned he'd vanished into the woods. A week later, they found him hiding at his uncle's cabin. In court, he sat there, hands cuffed, eyes hollow, and said, "I don't know why I did it. I loved her." The prosecutor showed everything. The photos, the messages, the knife, the shattered window. The things he'd said at the party. The jury didn't take long. Guilty, breaking and entering, stalking, attempted first-degree murder. Later, his lawyers appealed. They said he had mental health issues, that his clean record made him less dangerous. The murder charge was reduced. 16 years. It's been 3. I moved away from Pine Grove. I don't use dating apps. I don't even trust new people. Still, sometimes lying in bed, I feel it, the weight of unseen eyes. The hairs on my neck rise, and I hear that faint echo of glass breaking like it's happening again. I know he's behind bars. But part of me is still frozen in that moment, standing barefoot in the shards, realizing how close it came. And sometimes I can't stop wondering, if I hadn't rejected him that night, would he have done it anyway? All I know is I survived. I never pictured myself as someone who'd fall into the world of dating apps. But after the year I'd had, it almost felt inevitable. I was 25, freshly back in my hometown of Maplewood, Illinois. My 4-year relationship with my college boyfriend, Caleb, had just imploded, though truthfully, it had been rotting long before it died. For years I'd convinced myself that the jealousy, the subtle control, the long silences were just his way of loving me. That's how some people show they care, I used to tell myself, trying to make sense of the knots in my chest. But deep down I knew it wasn't love. It was ownership dressed as affection. The night everything broke was quiet, almost anticlimactic. I'd come home late from work, phone dead in my purse, and found him pacing the living room, eyes red, jaw tight. "Where were you?" he snapped. "My phone died," I said, still in my coat. "I told you I had a late shift." "Don't lie to me," he hissed. "Who were you with?" When I realized he'd tried to track me and panicked because my location had gone dark, something in me cracked. I remember locking myself in the bathroom, sitting on the cold tile floor, shaking, tears dripping onto my knees. The faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air like smoke. That was the moment I understood. Love shouldn't feel like suffocation. Leaving him was brutal. The kind of breakup that drains the air from your lungs and leaves your apartment full of ghosts. But I managed. What came after, the emptiness, was worse. My friends had drifted off into marriages, new cities, careers. I'd just finished my communications degree and landed a decent marketing job downtown. But the silence that greeted me every night felt endless. The evenings were the hardest. I'd curl up in bed, blue light washing over my face, scrolling through my phone until my eyes burned, wondering if I'd ever find someone who didn't make me feel small. That's when I downloaded the apps. At first it was curiosity. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. Then it became habit. Swipe left, swipe right. Tiny flares of interest that died before they burned. The late night "you up?" messages made me roll my eyes, but I kept going. There was this quiet hunger for connection I couldn't shut off. That's how I found Ryan Matthews. His profile was normal, refreshingly so. A couple of clean-cut photos. One hiking in the Smoky Mountains, one at a rooftop bar with friends, and another holding a golden retriever puppy. His bio read, 27, mechanical engineer. Love hiking, cooking, and live music. Looking for something real. No shirtless selfies. No cryptic one-liners. Just grounded. I swiped right. He matched instantly. Our first messages still make me smile when I think about them. Ryan. So, Ashley from Maplewood, you strike me as a brownies over cookies kind of person. Am I wrong? Me. Wow, bold assumption. But you're right. Brownies all the way. Ryan. Knew it. Only true geniuses pick brownies. Me. Oh, really? And what makes you the brownie authority? Ryan. I make a mean triple chocolate brownie. Family recipe. Maybe I'll prove it someday. I remember laughing, really laughing, the kind that slips out before you can stop it. He wasn't trying too hard. He wasn't sleazy. Just easy to talk to. We texted for a week straight. Quick morning check-ins before work. Random midday updates, goodnight messages that somehow made the dark feel lighter. He told me about his job designing automotive parts, about weekend hikes, about his dog, the golden retriever, Milo. I told him about my love for trying new coffee shops, how I spent commutes binging true crime podcasts, and how I still hadn't figured out how to make friends again in Maplewood. It felt normal, comforting, familiar in a way that scared me a little. So when he suggested meeting up, I said yes, but that's where things started to shift. Ryan asked if he could come by my place. At first I froze. I'd never invited anyone from an app over before. The thought of a stranger in my home, the creak of the old floors under unfamiliar footsteps, made my stomach flutter with unease. I get it, he said over text. Totally respect boundaries, but if it helps I can bring coffee or dinner. Keep it low-key. No pressure. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. My parents were out of town for the weekend, the house quiet and still. Maybe too quiet. And part of me, the lonely part that was tired of waiting for something perfect, whispered that maybe this was fine. Maybe I was ready. I told myself I could always throw him out if he turned out weird, so I said yes. Saturday morning arrived with that brittle mix of nerves and a small, foolish excitement. I cleaned like someone trying to make a good impression on a life that might be over in an afternoon. Wiped counters until my hands tingled. Straightened the throw pillows, opened windows to let the late winter air in. I pulled on a light sweater and my favorite jeans and, because of that silly brownie banter, baked a tray of triple chocolate brownies. The house smelled warm and faintly of cocoa. It felt like a private joke that only 2 people would understand. At 2:45, I checked my phone. Ryan, leaving now. Be there in 15. At exactly 3, I heard the knock. My heart did that little stuttering thing, like it wanted to sprint through my ribs. I smoothed my sweater, inhaled, and opened the door. He was not Ryan. He was older, mid-30s maybe, and he wore his day on him. His work pants looked stained, sleeves dusted with the kind of grit that won't come out in one wash. His hair was greasy at the part, and his face had a fringe of unshaven stubble. He looked heavier than the photos, like someone who had stopped noticing the shape of his own shoulders. The light hit him wrong. He had an angerless, tired set to his jaw. He smiled, but it was crooked and thin. Hi, he said, forcing something meant to be friendly into his voice. He held the smile like a prop. Ashley, I managed, and for a second my brain scrambled for the script people use in situations that feel off. Who are you? I asked as carefully as I could, the kind of careful that tries not to sound like accusation. Ryan, he said fast, but then, after an odd little pause, he added, well, my nephew helped me with the profile. Those are his pictures. I figured if I used mine, no one would swipe right. He chuckled, but it landed awkwardly, like a footstep in a room with no carpet. Every instinct in my body screamed to shut the door. My throat felt tight and my palms were suddenly hot, but I didn't slam it. I didn't call someone. I told myself I wasn't being rude. That escalating would make me look unstable. So I let him inside. We sat on the couch and I kept my body angled away, making myself small and distant at once. I offered him a brownie more out of some social reflex than hospitality. He took it but didn't eat it. He just held it. Eyes trained on me in a way that felt less like looking and more like measuring. The TV murmured something about a morning show, but the sound blurred into the background of my own thoughts. I could feel the heat of the oven on my face, the tiny grit of sugar on my tongue from tasting batter, the faint citrus from the cleaner I'd used that morning. Everything smelled too domestic for how wrong the moment felt. I stood up and told myself I needed water. In the kitchen, I texted Lena with my thumbs that were suddenly clumsy. Hey, guy came over. Doesn't look like his pics. Kind of sketch. We'll call you soon. I almost hit send before hesitating, convinced it was dramatic. then pressed send anyway because the message felt like a small lifeline. When I returned, he was closer to the edge of the couch, leaning forward, hands clasped between his knees as if in prayer. His eyes were fixed on me. He tilted his head and said softly, "You're even prettier in person." "Thanks," I said, because what else do you say to a compliment that lands like a warning? My smile was tight. There was a silence that folded over itself. His stare didn't break. It held until the air felt thin. I couldn't do it. I tried to be polite, to make some reasonable exit for both of us. "Listen, my parents are actually coming home soon, so you should probably head out," I said, voice a notch higher than usual, the way people do to force themselves to be heard in a crowded room. He sat for a long beat without moving. Then slowly he stood. "Sure," he said. "I get it." Relief floodlit my chest. I followed him to the door, fingers already curling around the knob, ready to shut the world out behind him. As he crossed the threshold, he reached into his pocket and pulled something small out. For a second, it was just metal flashing in the light, a glint like a lie under a smile. He unfolded a small folding knife and held it up so it caught the sunlight. "You know," he said, almost conversational, as if telling me the weather, "I could have killed you today." My breath hiccuped. My mouth went dry. Movement slowed to the viscous drag of a bad dream. He looked at me and then, unbelievably, he smiled. It was too casual, like the punchline of some private joke that I wasn't supposed to understand. "Kidding?" he added, laughing in a way that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. He turned and walked to an old pickup truck idling on the curb, climbed in, and drove away. The engine revved like an exhale. I stood in the doorway long after the taillights disappeared into the street, the cold evening air brushing my face. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled with the lock, fingers clumsy, the click of the deadbolt sounding absurdly loud. That night I did what people do when the world shifts under them. I deleted every dating app. I blocked his number. I sat in the hollow quiet of the house and realized, with a kind of stunned clarity, how close the afternoon had come to unthinkable violence. The brownies were still on the counter, cooling and untouched, and the smell of chocolate that had once felt cozy now pressed against my teeth like a warning. I kept replaying the moment over and over, his voice, the casual way he said it, the cold folding knife glinting against his thumb. Months later, the sentence still lives in the quiet rooms of my head. I hear it when I wake up in the middle of the night, when the house is full of the small noises of an empty place, the pipe settling, the refrigerator humming, the old floorboards complaining as if they remember his footsteps. "I could have killed you today." The memory has weight. It sits across from me at the kitchen table, the way a loose tooth sits against your tongue. Impossible to ignore and always there. And somewhere deep and honest inside, I know he wasn't joking. I never imagined I'd be that guy, sitting in the dim blue glow of my phone at 2 a.m., thumb twitching across a dating app like it was muscle memory. 40 years old, a mid-level developer in tech, living alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, Ohio. My days bled together, code reviews, meetings that could have been emails, microwave dinners, and late-night Reddit scrolls until the screen stung my eyes. I wasn't the kind of man who turned heads. I wasn't even the kind who got invited to gatherings anymore. The breakup that tipped me into this rut wasn't explosive or cinematic. Elena, my partner of 5 years, had waited until after dinner. I still remember the sound of the fork settling against her plate. She took a slow breath and said my name in that careful practice tone people use when they've rehearsed pain. "Mark," she began softly. "I can't keep doing this. It feels like we're roommates who split bills, not partners who share a life." I stared down at my half-eaten pasta, watching steam fade into nothing. My throat felt tight, she sighed. "I've been patient, but you don't really let me in. I want more than this quiet half-love. I deserve it." There wasn't any shouting, no tears, just the unbearable silence of something ending gently. Over the next few weeks, she packed her things methodically, her sweaters disappearing from drawers, her toothbrush gone from the sink. By the time the last box left, the apartment felt too big, too clean. Nights were the worst. The bed felt like a stage with half the cast missing. Loneliness doesn't slam into you, it seeps. It trickles into the pauses between Netflix episodes, the empty chair at breakfast. The moment you realize one toothbrush will now last you months. That's when I downloaded Tinder. I told myself it was just to talk. Not to find love, not to rebound. Just to feel seen by another voice that wasn't my cat or the cashier at Kroger. At first, it was robotic. Swipe left, swipe right, send a polite hey that fizzled into silence. Then came Clara. She was 35, auburn hair grazing her shoulders, freckles scattered across her cheeks, and a smile that looked alive, unfiltered. Her bio said she loved old jazz records, collected antique clocks, and cared for her paralyzed grandfather on their family farm. Something about that felt real, earthy, grounded. Our first chat started playfully. Clara. Okay, important question. If you could eat only one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be? Me. Easy. Pasta. It's cheap, filling, and hard to ruin. Clara. Stew. My grandpa swears by it. Says it's the only real food left in this world. Maybe I'll make it for you sometime. I'd like that. I don't think anyone's ever made me stew before. Clara. Then you're long overdue. She was funny, quick, warm. She didn't send dry one-liners. She actually wanted to know me. She asked about my job even after I warned her it was all screens and debugging. When I sent her a picture of Juniper, my cat tangled in a paper bag, she replied, "That cat looks smarter than most people I know." We met twice before things began to feel serious. The first date was coffee downtown. She showed up in a green coat with one button missing, hair wind-blown, laughing with her whole face. The second was a quiet walk along the river. She talked about losing her mother young, being raised by her grandfather, and how the countryside made her feel both safe and trapped. By the third week, she called me one night. "Come out Saturday," she said, her voice soft but buzzing with excitement. "I'll cook. You've been eating frozen dinners, haven't you?" I laughed. Guilty. "Then you'll finally have real food," she teased. "But it has to be at my place. I can't leave Grandpa alone at night." There was a small pause, a flicker of hesitation I ignored. It was fast, sure, but after months of numb quiet, warmth felt worth the risk. Her farmhouse sat 20 minutes outside town, tucked behind a line of bare trees off a narrow, cracked road. The drive was lonely. By the time I reached the gravel driveway, dusk had already smeared purple across the sky. The house looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. White paint peeling, porch swing creaking softly in the wind, a faint yellow glow leaking from the kitchen window. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Clara stood there, apron tied around her waist, cheeks flushed from the stove's heat. She smiled, stepping forward to kiss me lightly on the cheek. "You made it," she said, breath warm against my skin. Come in, come in." The scent hit me first. Herbs, onions, raw meat, something metallic beneath it. Inside, the house was cluttered, but not messy, more preserved. Faded portraits, heavy drapes, clocks of every size ticking out of sync, their uneven rhythm filling the silence. In the kitchen, I froze. On the counter sat several slabs of raw meat, unwrapped, unchilled, slick and glistening in the warm kitchen light. Thick drops ran down the cutting board and pattered softly onto the wooden counter, leaving dark stains that spread like oil. I tried to keep my voice casual, though something about it made my stomach twist. Shouldn't that be in the fridge? Clara glanced over her shoulder and waved a hand dismissively. Doctor's orders. Grandpa's on a special diet, full meat. It's the only thing his body accepts now. Oh, I muttered, forcing a thin smile. Right. The stew on the stove burbled softly, releasing waves of steam that smelled thick, fatty, almost metallic. She stirred it slowly, humming a faint tune under her breath. Something old and lilting, like a forgotten lullaby. As night settled, the house grew unnervingly still. We sat in the living room, a fire whispering in the hearth, chatting about movies. I tried to focus on her laughter, but my eyes kept wandering toward the dark hallway. At the end stood a half-closed door. Her grandfather's room. She'd told me earlier that he was paralyzed, bedridden, unable to speak, hadn't left his room in years. But I hadn't heard a single sound from behind that door. No coughs, no creaks, not even the faint rhythm of breathing. Around 11, Clara stood and smoothed her apron. "I need to change Grandpa into his nightclothes and give him his medicine," she said softly. "I'll be right back." I nodded, pretending calm, but my nerves prickled as soon as she disappeared down the hall. The silence that followed was heavy, so complete that I could hear my own pulse. Out of boredom, or maybe some reckless curiosity, I stood and wandered. Near the kitchen, I noticed a narrow door half hidden behind a rack of coats. It led down to the basement. The moment I cracked it open, a foul stench hit me, thick, wet, unmistakably rotten. My eyes watered. I covered my mouth with my sleeve and thumbed my phone flashlight on. The wooden stairs groaned beneath each step as I descended. My knees trembled, breath shallow. The beam of light wavered over shelves, jars, dozens of them. Glass jars filled with cloudy fluid, each containing something pale and obscene, a finger, an eye, a strip of flesh curling at the edges like wilted paper. My stomach lurched. Crates stacked high with bones filled the far wall. Hooks dangled from the beams, rusted, still streaked with dark residue. From one hung what looked like a torso. Ribs split wide, organs gone. One arm still wore a gold wedding ring. I doubled over and vomited onto the steps, the acid burning my throat. Footsteps creaked overhead. Then softly, the sound of a door closing. Panic surged through me. I stumbled upward, nearly tripping on the last stair, and slammed the basement door shut. My chest heaved as I stumbled back into the living room just as Clara reappeared, smiling that same gentle, practiced smile. "Everything okay?" she asked, my voice cracked. "Yeah, just..." Stretched my legs. Her eyes lingered on me for a long second, too long. Like she could hear my pulse from across the room. Then she smiled again, perfectly calm. "You look tired. Want me to set up the guest room?" My mind screamed at me to run, but my body betrayed me. I nodded. "Yeah, that'd be great." She led me down the dim hallway. As we passed the grandfather's room, I noticed the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, I caught a glimpse of a hospital-style curtain around the bed. The air that drifted out was sour, heavy with decay. On the floor just inside the threshold, plates sat piled high, crusted with scraps, buzzing with flies. I swallowed hard. The guest room was across the hall. She smiled again, her eyes catching the light in a strange way. "I'll grab blankets. Make yourself comfortable." As soon as she disappeared, I slipped across the hall and pushed open the old man's door. The stench hit like a wave, sweet, cloying rot that clung to my tongue. My phone light flickered as I moved closer. The figure in the bed lay perfectly still, hidden behind the curtain. His chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. I turned toward the small window on the far wall. The frame was old, stiff, but wide enough to crawl through. I eased it open inch by inch, the hinges groaning quietly. Then I heard it, a sound behind the curtain. Slow, rasping breathing, wet and uneven. I turned just as the head snapped toward me. The curtain swayed back. Eyes, milky, lifeless, locked on mine. And then the mouth opened. The lips stretched, splitting at the corners. The grin widened impossibly, revealing rows of teeth. Too many, too long, jagged like glass shards. My blood turned to ice. I bolted for the window, scraping my arm open on the jagged frame as I hauled myself through. I hit the ground hard, rolled, and ran. Branches clawed at my face, tearing skin, but I didn't stop until the woods broke into the main road. A truck driver braked hard when he saw me stumbling, bloody and gasping. At the nearest gas station, I called the police. They went to the farmhouse that night. Here's the part that still crawls under my skin. When they arrived, the house was empty. No Clara, no grandfather, no jars, nothing. Property records showed the place had been abandoned for almost 20 years. The last listed owner was Raymond Fletcher, a butcher paralyzed in a farm accident in the late 90s. He died in 2002. There was no record of any Clara Fletcher. No license, no birth certificate, a trace. I deleted every dating app after that. But sometimes when I dream, I'm back in that room, the curtain beginning to pull aside and those dead eyes find me again. The grin stretches wide, teeth glinting in the dark, sharp and endless. And every single time I wake with the smell of raw meat thick in my nose. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to sign up for a dating app. For most of my life, I'd been painfully awkward around people, especially when it came to dating. I wasn't the type to approach strangers in coffee shops or strike up conversations at bars. Honestly, I didn't even go to bars much. After my last relationship ended a little over a year ago, I sort of disappeared into myself. Long nights of Netflix, endless overtime, video games, and quiet dinners for one. I told myself I didn't need anyone. That solitude was safer, but loneliness has a way of sneaking in through the cracks, usually when you think you've sealed them for good. My best friend, Tasha, had been on my case for months. "Liv, come on," she said one night from her couch, our half-eaten pizza sagging on a greasy box between us. "You can't just sit in your apartment forever. Try something new. Everyone's on dating apps now." I groaned, slumping back. "You know me. I'm terrible at small talk." I freeze up. "I'll look like a total idiot," she smirked, licking sauce from her thumb. "You'll be fine. It's not like you're meeting them face to face. You just text. You're great at texting." I rolled my eyes but couldn't argue. Texting was safer. You could edit yourself, hide the awkward pauses, sound clever when you had time to think. Real life didn't offer that luxury. That night, against my better judgment, I downloaded OkCid. I told myself it was just curiosity, just to see who was out there. Worst case, I'd waste an hour or two. Best case, maybe I'd find someone decent to talk to. After a week of half-hearted swiping, I matched with a guy named Ethan Rivers. His profile stood out not because it was trying too hard, but because it wasn't. He described himself as a freelance graphic designer who loved cooking, horror movies, and hiking. His photos were simple, one at a farmer's market, one sketching in a notebook, another of him smiling awkwardly beside his dog, a scruffy mutt named Scout. Our conversations flowed easier than I expected. He wasn't pushy like some of the others. He cracked self-deprecating jokes. "I'm 5'7", so don't wear heels unless you want to dunk on me," and actually paid attention to my replies. He didn't just wait for his turn to talk. He asked questions, remembered details. Over the next 2 weeks, we texted constantly. Memes, movie recs, tiny updates from our days. There were moments I caught myself smiling at my phone like an idiot. Then one Friday night, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. "I know this is cliché," he texted, "but I make a mean pasta. Come over and I'll cook for you. We can watch some indie horror movies. Promise it won't be boring." My first instinct was to say no. Every safety article screamed, "Meet in public first," but then I hesitated. He seemed different, kind, grounded, and at 6'2", I towered over him. I figured if anything felt off, I could handle myself. Still, I texted Tasha. "Girl, you are not going to some dude's apartment for your first date," she replied immediately. "I know," I typed back. "But he seems different. He cooks, remember? And I'm not exactly fragile." "Different is what every girl says before she ends up on Dateline," she shot back. We argued back and forth until I finally promised her a safety plan. I gave her his full name, his address, and we agreed on a code word, pineapple. If I texted it, she'd call with an emergency excuse for me to leave. The night of the date, I stood outside Ethan's apartment building in Portland, my stomach in knots. The place was small but well kept. Brick exterior, ivy climbing the side, a warm yellow light glowing through his window. I texted Tasha, "Here, I'll update if things get weird." "Don't die," she replied, followed by a knife emoji. I laughed quietly and knocked. Ethan opened the door almost immediately, smiling. "Liv, hey, wow, you're taller than I pictured." "Guess I didn't lie on my profile," I said, forcing a laugh. He stepped aside, ushering me in. His apartment smelled faintly of sandalwood incense and something deeper. Old books, maybe. Canvases leaned against the walls. Sketchpads scattered across the coffee table. It was cluttered but intentional, creative. Not dirty, just lived in. "Want the tour?" he asked. "Sure." He showed me around. A cozy living room, a cramped kitchen, and finally his bedroom. He lingered there just a second too long, his grin crooked. "This is the bed I told you about, king size. Plenty of room for tall people." I forced a chuckle. Good to know. We moved on quickly, and I expected him to start cooking, but instead he grabbed a bottle of wine from the counter and presented it with a mock flourish. "Ta-da. Red imported, cost me $100. You're gonna love it." "Oh, nice," I said, smiling politely. But something about that made me frown inside. It wasn't the bragging. It was the way he said it, like a magician introducing a trick he couldn't wait to see unfold. "So, what's for dinner?" I asked, trying to sound light. Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. "Didn't really get around to buying groceries. Figured wine would be enough for the vibe, you know?" I gave a nervous laugh. "You said pasta." "Yeah, but wine's more romantic, right?" he said, grinning like it was a clever joke. My stomach growled in response. I hadn't eaten all day, assuming he'd cook. He must have noticed because he quickly added, I've got chips and bread. We can snack. Not exactly the romantic dinner I'd pictured, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful. We poured wine, ate stale chips, and made awkward small talk. Still, I couldn't ignore the way he kept refilling my glass every time I took a sip. "Whoa, slow down," I said after the third top-off, half laughing. "Come on, loosen up," he teased. "This is the good stuff. Don't waste it." I forced a smile, though unease had started to crawl under my skin. Something about his insistence, the way his eyes flicked from my glass to my mouth, made my chest tighten. After the bottle was empty, he dimmed the lights and turned to his shelf. "Movie time," he said. I expected some quiet indie horror or maybe a cult classic. Instead, he pulled out a scratched DVD case, a Serbian film. My stomach dropped. "Seriously?" I asked. "That movie's not really my thing." "That's because you don't get it," he said smugly, sliding it into the player. "It's not just shock value, it's art, social commentary. You'll see." "I've seen it," I said, firmer this time.
Not interested in watching it again. He waved a hand dismissively.
"You didn't really see it. You probably just looked away. Watch it with me, I'll explain it." Against my better judgment, I stayed. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe I didn't want to make a scene in a stranger's apartment, so I sat there, tense, pretending to watch as he hit play. Half an hour in, the film reached one of its most disturbing scenes. I tried to distract myself, picking up my phone and sending Tasha a casual text. "Still alive." "Just watching a movie," Ethan noticed immediately. "Who are you texting?" he asked, his tone sharp. "My friend," I said, keeping my voice even. "Just letting her know I'll be late." He relaxed a little, leaning back. "Good. Don't want any distractions." The room went silent except for the TV. Then came that awful scene. Ethan didn't speak. He just breathed, heavy, ragged through his nose. I glanced sideways. His eyes were fixed on the screen, wide, unblinking. His lips were parted slightly. "You good?" I asked carefully. He didn't answer, just made a low sound, almost a groan. Then without warning, he scooted closer until our hips touched. His hand slid onto my thigh. I jerked back. "What are you doing?" "Why not?" he whispered. My skin crawled. "I should go," I said, grabbing my purse and standing up. "Wait!" he snapped, his voice sharp and full of irritation. But I didn't stop. My pulse thundered in my ears as I bolted for the door. The hallway outside was dark, and the moment the latch clicked behind me, a high-pitched animal-like screech erupted from inside the apartment. I froze. For one horrifying second, I thought he'd locked the door, or that he was coming for me. My fingers trembled as I fought with the knob, finally wrenching it open. I ran, down the narrow stairwell out into the street, heart hammering. The sound of that screech seemed to chase me, echoing faintly behind me. I called Tasha as soon as I hit the sidewalk. "Get here now, please," I stammered, my voice shaking. She pulled up 5 minutes later. The second I climbed into her car, I broke. Tears came fast, uncontrollable. On the ride home, I told her everything. The fake dinner, the constant refills, the movie, the way he touched me during that scene. Tasha's face went pale. "Liv, that's seriously messed up. I'm so sorry I wasn't closer." "It's not your fault," I whispered, staring out the window. "But I don't think that guy's just awkward. There's something really wrong with him." The next day I blocked his number. It didn't feel like enough. I replayed everything in my head until I finally called the police. Not to file a report, but as a warning. The officer on the phone sounded tired but kind. "You're right," he said. "None of this is technically illegal, but we'll note his name. If something else happens, we'll know where to start." It wasn't justice, but it was something. A small measure of control after a night that stripped it away. I didn't date again for years. And when I finally did, I made one rule. Public places only. No exceptions. Because what I learned that night was this. It's not the obvious red flags that destroy you. It's the ones that smile, pour your wine, and only show themselves when you're already sitting in the dark beside them, realizing too late that you're not with someone awkward. You're with someone dangerous. I never imagined I'd be the kind of man to try online dating. For most of my life, I hadn't needed to. I married young, right after college, to a woman I believed I'd grow old with. Her name was Rachel, and she was everything that anchored me. My partner, my compass, my best friend. We built a small, quiet life together just outside Springfield, Missouri. I worked for a local logistics company, She taught elementary school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, warm hours. I used to think that kind of peace lasted forever, until the night it was stolen from me. Rachel was killed by a drunk driver in the fall of 2005. She'd been driving home after grading papers at her favorite coffee shop. The man who hit her was twice her size and 3 times over the legal limit. She died instantly. I still remember the call, 11:48 p.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen lighting the dark. I answered half asleep, my voice thick, unaware that the sound on the other end would shatter the rest of my life. The years after that were a blur of silence and survival. I didn't just lose my wife, I lost the person I was with her. My house became a tomb. I'd spend whole nights staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator because it was the only sound that proved the world still existed. Friends stopped calling after a while. I stopped answering long before that. People told me to move on, to let time do its work. But how do you move on when every breath of your home still smells faintly of her shampoo? When you walk past her favorite bookstore and still hear her laugh, I couldn't even bring myself to wash her coffee mug. It stayed on the counter for 2 years like a shrine. For a long time, I believed I'd stay alone. Grief hardens into habit after a while. But grief also morphs, it dulls, softens, waits. 7 years later, that waiting turned into something unbearable. I'd watch my friends hold their kids, hear them talk about anniversaries, and go home to an empty house that echoed whenever I opened the door. That's when I did the thing I swore I never would. Online dating. It was the early 2000s, still awkward, still whispered about in break rooms and family dinners. After a week of debating, I chose Match.com. It seemed safe enough. One night, with my hands trembling like I was doing something forbidden, I sat at my old desktop computer and made a profile. Name, Daniel. Age, 41. Status, widowed. No kids. Never remarried. I uploaded a few photos, one from a cousin's barbecue where I actually smiled, one from a fishing trip, and another from a company dinner. Nothing impressive, just enough to prove I was real and hopefully not terrifying. Then somehow, someone messaged me. Her name was Samantha, 38, lived in Fairview, a town maybe 20 minutes away. Worked in retail? Her profile was short: book lover, dog owner, coffee addict. Her photo showed a brunette with kind, almost shy eyes and a smile that wasn't perfect but genuine. At first, I didn't expect much, but our chats turned easy, natural. She asked about my favorite movies, what kind of work I did, and eventually, hesitantly, about Rachel. I didn't want to go there, but something in her tone felt sincere, so I told her. When I finished typing, she responded, "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I lost someone too, an engagement that ended badly. I get it, that hole never really fills, does it?" That message sat on my screen for a long time. Somehow it made me trust her. Weeks passed. Our conversations stretched late into the night, growing warmer, more familiar. I found myself smiling at my phone, something I hadn't done in years. It felt strange, wrong even, like betraying Rachel, but it also felt alive. One night, after pacing around my living room for 20 minutes, I finally typed, "Would you like to meet in person? Maybe grab a drink at Johnson's Tavern? It's quiet, nothing fancy." Her reply came almost instantly. "I'd love that, Daniel. I think it's time we met." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. Nearly 10 years since my last date, and suddenly I was back to being a nervous kid again, checking my reflection, overthinking every word. The next evening, I shaved, ironed a shirt I hadn't worn in years, cleaned out my car, and tried to ignore the knot in my chest. Johnson's Tavern was only 5 minutes away, a rustic, wood-paneled bar where the regulars knew your name and the jukebox never stopped playing old country songs. When I stepped inside, laughter rolled through the air. The smell of fried food and beer clung thick as the sound of pool balls cracked in the back. It was warm, familiar, grounding. I found a small table near the back, away from the noise, ordered a soda to steady my nerves, and pulled out my phone. "Here," I typed to Samantha. "Take your time. I'll be waiting." "Hey, I'm here." "Just grabbed a table," she replied. "Running late, caught in some traffic. Be there in 10. I exhaled, trying to calm the restless pulse in my throat. That's when Gabriel, the bartender, sauntered over. Damn, Mr. Daniels, she teased, her grin wide. You're dressed sharp tonight. Big date or something? I laughed, but it came out shaky. Something like that, Gabby. She was only 19, home from college for the summer, owner's daughter, small-town curious in that way where she seemed to know everyone's secrets before they did. If you wanted gossip, you went to Gabby. She could find out where someone was born, what they drove, and who they were sleeping with, all before your drink hit the counter. Let me see, she said, eyebrows raised with playful suspicion. Got a picture? I hesitated, then sighed and handed her my phone. She glanced at the photo of Samantha. For a second, barely a second, her expression changed. The grin softened, faltered. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Huh, she murmured under her breath. What? I asked, a nervous laugh catching in my throat. Nothing, she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She's pretty. You're lucky. Then she turned and walked away. Gabby never just walked away. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overthinking, but something in my gut wouldn't settle. The clock above the bar ticked louder than it should have. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Almost there. Just a couple more minutes. That's when I noticed Gabby again, whispering with 2 older men at the bar. I recognized them. Local truckers, regulars. They kept glancing toward me, their faces tight, serious. The mood of the room shifted, subtle but sharp. Conversations dimmed. Someone turned the jukebox volume down. When Gabby came back, her hands were trembling slightly as she set my drink down. Can I see that picture again? She asked softly. Sure, I said, unlocking my phone, heart starting to race. She stared at the screen longer this time. Then she leaned in, her voice low enough for only me to hear. Daniel, that's not Samantha. I frowned. What do you mean? Her throat bobbed. That's a man. His real name's Charles. He got out of prison 6 months ago. The words hit like a fist. What are you talking about? Gabby glanced around, making sure no one else was listening. He's known around here. He pretends to be women online, sets up dates with lonely guys. He's been caught breaking into their houses afterward. Stealing, stalking, fraud, burglary, you name it. He only got out early because his family pulled strings. I blinked hard, shaking my head. No, that's Gabby, that can't... Daniel, she cut in sharply, eyes wide with urgency. I called the police. They're on their way, but you need to act normal until they get here, okay? Normal? My pulse thundered. He knows where I live. I told him about Rachel. God, I told him everything. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. Parking now. See you in a sec. Gabby's face went pale. She whispered, One of the truckers is going to keep an eye on you. Don't freak out. Just stay calm. The bar door creaked open, and there she was. The person I knew as Samantha stepped inside, wearing the same warm smile from her profile picture. For one surreal moment, no one moved. The entire bar went still, the air thick enough to choke on. I raised a trembling hand in a half wave, forcing a hollow smile as every muscle in my body screamed. My fists tightened under the table. Gabby approached the newcomer, her voice steady but clipped. Evening. Need a table? Oh no, Samantha said in a high, lilting voice. I see my date already. At that exact moment, red and blue lights flashed against the tavern's wooden walls. 2 county sheriff cruisers pulled up outside. The smile on Samantha's face faltered. Then, panic. He spun on his heel, bolting for the exit. He didn't make it. One of the deputies met him at the door, slamming him down hard onto the wooden floor. Chairs scraped back, someone gasped. The high-pitched voice cracked as he shrieked, This is a mistake. I'm a woman. I'm a woman. But the deputies weren't listening. They cuffed him fast, read him his rights, and dragged him outside. The bar stayed silent except for the sound of his shouts fading into the night. I sat there frozen, my drink untouched, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Rage and humiliation twisted together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Gabby touched my arm gently. You okay? I laughed once bitterly. No, I said. Not even close. That night I drove home without the radio on, the glow of the dashboard lights blurring through my tears. When I got inside, Rachel's photo was waiting on my dresser, her smile steady, untouched by time. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at it until the sun began to rise. All I'd wanted was connection, a little warmth in a cold house. But what I found was a reminder that monsters don't always hide in the dark anymore. They hide behind screens, behind smiles, behind kind words typed on glowing phones. From that day forward, I swore off online dating for good. I'd rather live with loneliness than ever again invite that kind of evil into my life. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd actually end up on a dating app. I used to laugh when people said they met online. It sounded pathetic back in high school, like confessing you couldn't make a real human connection. But 2 years into college, I wasn't laughing anymore. I was 20, buried under civil engineering at Lakewood University, and honestly, I was worn down to the bone. I had friends, guys I studied with, people to grab pizza with, but when it came to dating, it felt like I was watching life through glass. Every time I opened Instagram, I'd see couples I knew, arms wrapped around each other, city lights behind them, greasy diner selfies at 2 a.m., even dumb study photos captioned with inside jokes. Meanwhile, I was always the one walking home alone from the library at ungodly hours, earbuds in, pretending the silence didn't feel like a weight pressing on my ribs, but it did. It crept in, quiet but heavy, until one Friday night it finally cracked open. A friend invited me over to hang out, just movies, food, something easy. When I got there, one of the guys was sitting way too close to a girl I didn't recognize. They weren't even official, but the air around them shimmered with that unspoken tension. The way their knees brushed, how they leaned in close, whispering and laughing like the rest of us didn't exist. I left early. Back in my dorm, I sat in the dark while my laptop fan whirred and the mini fridge hummed like background noise to my own emptiness. That's when I finally admitted it. I was tired of being alone. That night, I downloaded Plenty of Fish. Making a profile felt humiliating. What the hell do you even say about yourself without sounding like a complete idiot? I threw together something half serious. Liked horror movies, video games, hiking when I wasn't buried in calculus, and coffee. Always coffee. Then I uploaded a few pictures. One at the gym, one from a trip home, one with my dog. I hovered over publish, heart pounding, then tapped it anyway. Loneliness makes you reckless. The first week was rough. A few matches appeared, but most vanished without replying. The ones who did texted like bots, their words flat and hollow. Each night I scrolled through faces that blurred together, confidence draining by the minute. I almost deleted the damn app. Then one night while cramming for a midterm, my phone buzzed. New message from Allison. Her profile picture stopped me cold. Long brown hair, dark eyes, a faint smile that looked reluctant, like she hated taking photos but tried anyway. Her bio was short, introvert, gamer, sarcastic but nice, looking for someone who gets me. Her message read, "So you're actually kind of cute." Didn't expect that on here. My chest tightened, stupidly excited. I typed fast, "Me? I'll take that as a compliment." Allison, most guys on here are super creepy. You look normal. That's rare. Me, trust me, I had the same fear about girls on here. Allison, fair. So what's your deal? You look busy. We talked for 2 hours about professors we both hated, games we played, how cafeteria food should qualify as cruel and unusual punishment. She was quick, funny, real. For the first time since downloading that cursed app, I felt like maybe this could actually lead somewhere. Over the next few days, we messaged constantly. She said she lived off campus, 19, a freshman majoring in English. We joked about our lives, her drowning in essays, me suffocating in equations. Sometimes while studying, my phone would buzz. "Allison, stop working and talk to me. I'm bored. If I fail this midterm, I'm blaming you." Allison, worth it. It felt easy, natural, like breathing. Then, about a week in, the tone shifted. One night, she got flirtier. It started as jokes about my gym photo, then, "Allison, truth or dare?" It was childish but fun. "Truth, what's your worst class? Dare, send a picture of your messy desk." It went on until the dares got bolder. When she told me to take off my shirt and send a picture, I laughed nervously but did it anyway. She sent one back, wearing just a tank top, and it kept going. Step by step, line by line, until I crossed one I swore I never would. I sent her a nude. She sent something too, though thinking back, I'm not sure it was even her. At the time, I went to bed grinning like an idiot. For once, someone actually wanted me. The next morning, silence. No texts, no replies. Not that afternoon either. By evening, the unease had started to crawl under my skin. She'd never gone more than a few hours without responding. Maybe she was busy, I told myself. Homework, friends, anything. But as midnight came and my phone stayed dark, dread pooled in my gut. The following day, while I was reviewing notes, my phone rang. Allison, she had never called before. I answered instantly. "Hey, Allison." Silence. Then a man's voice, deep, cold, trembling with anger. "What the hell are pictures of you doing on my 15-year-old daughter's phone?" My blood went to ice. "What? Who is this?" I stammered. You heard me?" The voice growled, low and shaking with fury. "You've been sending nudes to a child. Do you understand how serious this is? Do you have any idea what kind of sick freak that makes you?" Blood roared in my ears. The room tilted. My vision tunneled. "I didn't know," I blurted out. "Her profile said she was 19. She told me she went to my university. I swear I didn't know." "You're a liar," he snapped. "And now you're going to pay for what you've done. Unless you want the police at your door in the next hour, you'll send me $11,000 to make this go away." My lungs seized. I couldn't catch a full breath. His voice was too calm, too deliberate, like someone who'd done this before. "You've ruined your life, son," he said almost coldly, "sending sexual photos to a minor. You know what that makes you? A pedophile. The cops don't play games with people like you. I should be calling them right now." My throat felt raw, my hands slick with sweat. "I swear to God I didn't know," I pleaded, voice cracking. "She told me she was 19. Her profile said she was in college. Please, you have to believe me." A pause. I could hear his breathing, slow, heavy, controlled. Then, "You think the police care about your excuses? You think a judge is going to pat you on the head and say, 'Oh, he didn't know'? No, you'll be branded for life, prison, registering as a sex offender. Goodbye to your future." My heart slammed so violently I thought I'd faint. "Please," I whispered, "please don't do this to me." "I didn't know." Another pause. Then his tone changed, less rage, more calculation. "Maybe there's another way. Maybe I don't need to involve the police. Maybe I can keep this between us." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "You're going to compensate me for the trauma you caused my daughter," he said coldly. $11,000. That's the cost of therapy. That's the cost of me keeping my mouth shut. 11,000. My chest tightened. I barely had 700 to my name. Money I'd saved for a used car. "I don't have that," I said quickly. "I'm just a student, please." "Then figure it out," he barked. "Call your parents, borrow, sell your computer, your phone, I don't care. You have 2 hours. If I don't hear from you, I'm walking into the police station." The line went dead. I sat there frozen, staring at my phone like it might explode. For a long moment, I couldn't even move. My pulse hammered in my throat. My stomach knotted so tight I thought I'd throw up. The next 2 hours blurred together. I called my parents, hands shaking, voice breaking as I tried to explain. At first, they didn't believe me. Or worse, they thought I had done something unforgivable. My dad's voice exploded through the phone. "What the hell were you thinking? Sending nudes? Jesus Christ, are you insane?" "I didn't know," I kept saying. "She told me she was 19, Dad, please." "I didn't know." Then my mom got on, her tone softer but full of dread. "Honey, are you sure this is real? It could be a scam. People fake things like this all the time." "It didn't feel fake," I whispered. My whole body was trembling. He knew my name. He knew my school. He sounded serious. My dad cursed under his breath. Then quieter, resigned. "How much money do you have?" 700. He exhaled, long and angry. "All right, I'll cover the rest." His voice was still hard, but beneath it I could hear fear. Not for himself, for me. We wired the money. My parents sent the rest. Then we waited. For the next several hours, I sat in my dorm room, staring at the door, every sound outside making my pulse spike. When my phone finally buzzed, I nearly dropped it. A text from Allison's number. "Unknown, we got the money. Good choice. Enjoy your life. Don't ever contact this number again." Then, silence. The next day, the number was disconnected. For weeks after, I lived in paranoia. Every knock at the door made my chest seize. Every time a campus security car drove by, I thought it was for me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My grades tanked. My parents kept telling me it was a scam. Think about it, my mom said. Real cops don't let you pay them off. They show up. That guy preyed on your fear. It was blackmail, plain and simple. My dad was less gentle. This better be the last time you ever pull something this stupid. You got lucky. If it wasn't a scam, you'd be finished. No second chances. You hear me? I heard him. But I still don't know the truth. Part of me believes my parents that it was just a trap, an elaborate setup designed to squeeze desperate guys like me. The fake profile, the sudden escalation, the demand for money, it all fits. But the other part, can't let it go. What if Allison wasn't fake? What if there really was a father on the other end of that line? What if I crossed that line without even realizing it? That's what keeps me up at night. Not guilt, but uncertainty. The not knowing. All I know is this. I never touched a dating app again. And if anyone ever asks me about meeting people online, I tell them the truth. Be careful. Because one mistake, even one you never meant to make, can destroy your life in a heartbeat.